Dong Xiulan was stunned. The two of them were confused until Gu Yundong gave them some instructions in a low voice. They nodded solemnly and left the Gu family and Yongfu village. Only then did Gu Yundong catch up to Gu Dajiang. The family of four was quite good-looking, and they were especially eye-catching on the road. As soon as Dong Xiulan went out, she saw four people walking towards her. Especially when she saw Gu Dajiang carrying Gu Yunke, she was stunned. Who is this? Not only was he carrying little Kiki, but he was also so close to Madame Yang. If others saw this, wouldn't they gossip? It was Gu Yundong who greeted her first. "Aunt, are you going to wash your clothes?" Dong Xiulan nodded, but her curious gaze kept looking in Gu Dajiang's direction. "This is my father. He just returned yesterday. They'll bring my father to the village chief's house first. Well, come to Auntie's place another day." Dong Xiulan was a little stunned. It took her a while to react. "Your father? Yundong, you found your father?" "Yes, I found her." Gu Dajiang nodded at her. "It's the Zheng family's sister-in-law, right? I haven't been around these few days. Thank you for taking care of them." Dong Xiulan was stunned. She shook her head subconsciously. No, they took care of us." Gu Yundong waved his hand and left with Gu Dajiang. Dong Xiulan couldn't help but swallow her saliva. When they were far away, she suddenly slapped her thigh. She carried the wooden basin back to the courtyard and rushed to Zheng Hu. "This is unbelievable." Zheng Hu was about to stand up when he was suddenly shocked by her. He fell back into the chair and immediately frowned. "Why are you so shocked? You even asked me to pay attention to my legs. Look, you scared me." Dong Xiulan couldn't care less about his legs now. Her face was filled with shock. "You don't know who I saw just now." "Who?" "Yundong and her family." Zheng Hu couldn't help but want to touch her to see if she had a fever. "Don't you see her family every day? Do you have to make such a fuss?" No, I'm talking about her family. Besides Yundong and her mother, there's also her father." Zheng Hu glanced at her. "Of course, her mother and father." He paused halfway. "Huh," he said. "Who did you just say?" "Her father, Gu Dajiang. The one who lost contact with them on the way to escape. Is back." The thing in Zheng Hu's hand fell to the ground with a bang. "Really? I saw it with my own eyes. How can it be fake?" Dong Xiulan slowly calmed down. Then she sighed. "It's finally over. Her family has reunited. Previously, in order to find her father, Yundong even left home for a long time. Her father is really similar to Yunshu. He looks even more magnanimous and knowledgeable than Jiang Yongkong. I feel like I don't know where to put my hands and feet in front of him." Zheng Hu saw that she had no intention of helping him pick up things, so he could only prop up his legs and bend down to reach for them. He answered casually, "Isn't that normal? Yundong's father is really educated. Yunshu used to know a lot of words. I heard that it was his father who taught him. Those who are really knowledgeable give off a different feeling from the inside out." "Oh, you know what feeling is?" Dong Xiulan said in amusement. "Gu Yundong's father is really back. Why wouldn't I know? Look at Jiang Yongkong. Although he's dressed decently, is energetic, and speaks politely, you can tell at a glance that he hasn't studied." Dong Xiulan was puzzled. "You don't seem to like Jiang Yongkong. Didn't he help bring you back earlier?" Zheng Hu stood up and walked out. "What's there not to like? He's from town, and I'm just a farmer. It should be he who doesn't like me. I just feel uncomfortable talking to him." He thought about it and didn't know how to express it. He likes to talk word by word. He starts quoting ancient books after 2 sentences. I get a headache and can't chat with him. Then you're finished. Yundong's father has studied, so there's a lot of ink in his stomach. He must know more words. When he comes to visit us later, you won't be able to entertain him." Zheng Hu shook his head. "This is different." It wasn't like he hadn't spoken to a scholar before. For example, Mr. Qin had come to Yongfu village a few times before. He had only met him twice at the door and spoken more than a few words. However, there was no awkwardness. Instead, it made people feel very comfortable. Mr. Qin didn't talk too much. He just chatted normally. He talked about things others knew. Sometimes, as he talked, others would forget that he was actually a man with a lot of experience. In Zheng He's opinion, this was a true scholar. Jiang Yongkong looked a little out of place. But no matter what, he had never seen Gu Dajiang before and did not know his personality. However, he was still very happy that the Gu family was reunited. It was not just his family. Many people in the village had seen them along the way and naturally knew that Gu Yundong's father had returned. For a moment, everyone began to discuss. Many people would stop them and ask questions. By the time Gu Yundong and the others reached the village chief's house, half an hour had passed. The first person to see them was Jincai. He almost jumped up when he saw Gu Yundong. No, he had just gone to her not long ago, and now she was here. Was she going to settle scores with him? Gu Yundong smiled, and Gu Dajiang, who was beside her, spoke first. "Excuse me, is the village chief at home?" Only then did Jincai stop his gaze on him. After a slight pause, he nodded. "He is. Come in." As he spoke, he turned around and called for his father. Chen Liang knew that Gu Yundong had returned, but he did not know that Gu Dajiang had also been found. When she saw them, she was really shocked and her eyes widened in surprise. In fact, his initial thoughts were similar to Aunt Kes. He also felt that Gu Dajiang was either gone or he was most likely remarried and had children outside. It was unlikely that he would return. Unexpectedly, he really appeared. Moreover, from the looks of it, he cherished Madame Yang, his wife. Chen Liang thought that it was no wonder that he could raise 3 children like Yundong and her siblings. As expected, a father had a huge impact on his children. As Chen Liang spoke to Gu Dajiang, he thought about many things. When he knew that Gu Dajiang had come to his house as soon as he returned, he couldn't suppress the joy on his face. This meant that the man valued him. Scholars were indeed different. They knew etiquette. In his happiness, Chen Liang could not help but pull him along and say a few more words. It was only when Gu Yundong saw that it was almost lunchtime that she interrupted them and expressed that they had to go back. However, before she left, she took another look at Jincai. Arrangements for Jincai's heart trembled a little under that gaze. She was here. She was indeed here. As expected, she would complain to his father that he had gone to her in private for the job. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have been so kind. He even told her that someone had designs on her mother. Gu Yundong did not know that he was mentally prepared to retort at any time. She said to Chen Liang, "Uncle Chen, I have something to discuss with you." "Yes? Tell me." Jincai widened his eyes and hurriedly said, "I don't think there's any good business. Here it goes. I'm still lacking someone. I want to find someone experienced to work at my place. Brother Chen is a good person. I wonder if you're willing to let him come." Gu Yundong ignored Jincai and told him her plan. Jincai was stunned, and so was Chen Liang. He glanced at his eldest son and frowned. What did she mean by Brother Chen is a good person? The Gu family's girl had just returned yesterday evening and came over so early today. She had never even met Jincai before. How could she have the impression that he was a good person? This was clearly an excuse for his sake. She must have heard about his family's matters and was taking care of him. However, Chen Liang felt that he could not push his luck. Although he was the village chief, he could not have such privileges. Moreover, his Jinbao was already working in the Gu family's workshop and had even increased his salary last month. His eldest son would work there too? That was too unreasonable. Hence, Chen Liang shook his head. "Gu girl, I know you're taking care of our family, but there has to be a limit to everything. Your workshop doesn't lack people now. If you recruit one more person, your family will pay an additional salary. What if others find out and force you to accept them into the workshop? It doesn't matter if you recruit one, but what about 5 or 10? That's not how things work." Jincai's originally happy expression suddenly froze and he turned his head away angrily. Gu Yundong could not help but laugh. "Uncle Chen, you're thinking too much. I'm not asking Brother Chen to work at my house for your sake. I do need to recruit people and they're not going to the workshop. They're going to the county city." "What? To the county city?" "That's right. I plan to open a shop in the prefectural city in a few days." Shopkeeper Zheng in this county city is going to be transferred away. He has experience as a shopkeeper and has worked in the Prefectural city in the past. Therefore, isn't the shop in this county city lacking people? I have to recruit a new one. I thought of Brother Chen. I heard that Brother Chen used to work in town and has someone under him. He must be capable. I'm afraid the position is too insignificant for him. It's not insignificant at all. It's not insignificant at all. Jincai quickly replied. He was full of smiles and almost cheered. He was really surprised. He did not expect that not only did the Gu family's younger sister not snitch on him in front of his parents, but she also gave him a job. As expected, she was indeed someone who did great things. Chen Liang was also stunned. Go to the prefectural city to open a shop? He had thought about this before and felt that it would happen sooner or later. However, he did not expect it to happen so quickly. Even Madame Zhou and the others, who had heard the commotion not far away, were very surprised. But soon, this surprise was replaced by surprise. Chen Jincai could not help but cough lightly. He tugged at Gu Yundong's hand slightly and asked, Sister Gu, so you want me to go straight to the county city as the shopkeeper? He could. Gu Yundong gave him a strange look. Dream on. Bring me along. She did not stand on ceremony and interrupted his fantasy. Not a shopkeeper, but a shop assistant. The smile on Chen Jincai's face froze as expected. He looked at her with a shocked expression. Then, who will be the shopkeeper? Yuanzhi, Gu Yundong said matter-of-factly. He's been working for Gus for a long time and is already very experienced. Moreover, he's familiar with the process and knows the guests. It's only natural for him to be promoted to shopkeeper. Chen Jincai felt as if he had been hit by a stick. Yuanzhi? That hooligan? He had never thought that he would one day be a worker under a hooligan that he had once looked down on. Wasn't this cutting his heart? He retracted his thoughts. This girl from the Gu family was simply too cruel. Gu Yundong saw the change in his expression and asked with a smile, Brother Chen, are you unwilling? But if our shop needs a shopkeeper, they have to start as a shop assistant. Even shopkeeper Zheng used to be a shop assistant in the prefecture city for a few years. As she spoke, she sighed slightly. Since you're unwilling, forget it. Thinking about it, it makes sense. After all, Brother Chen used to be a manager. It's indeed a waste of your talent to be a shop assistant. It seems that I can only find another person. Chen Jincai's eyes widened and he instantly blurted out, Who said I'm unwilling? I'm very willing. Not only Gu Yundong, but even Chen Liang looked at him in surprise. Chen Liang had come to understand his son during this period of time. He was indeed a little ambitious. He always missed the days when he worked in town. It was as if he was still a small manager. Chen Liang almost raised his hoe to hit his head a few times. When he heard that his son was going to be a shop assistant, Chen Liang also felt that it was impossible. Who knew that his son would actually agree? Perhaps sensing his strange gaze, Chen Jincai immediately said, So what if he's a shop assistant? He's a shop assistant in the county. Wouldn't he be more knowledgeable than a small manager in town? Besides, if I work hard, I can become a shopkeeper. Chen Liang felt that these words were more like his son's. He looked at Gu Yundong, who smiled and said, So you've agreed? Agreed, Chen Jincai said. Chen Liang thought about it and nodded. All right, but you still have to wait for a few days. I'll come and look for Brother Chen then. Gu Yundong had already stood up. Uncle Chen will leave first. Chen Liang sent them to the door, paused and walked back. However, there was a smile on his face in the end, especially when he saw that his wife, Madame Zhou, also looked like she had been relieved of a burden. She felt at ease. Chen Jincai's wife, Madame Wei, was also overjoyed. She turned around and followed Chen Jincai into the house. She leaned close to his ear and whispered, When you go to the county city, bring me along. They'll take care of your laundry and food. Chen Jincai's smile faded slightly. He frowned and said, Why would I bring you along? I'm just a small shop assistant. When Yuanzhi was a shop assistant, did he bring anyone along? Isn't that because Yuanzhi hasn't married yet? That won't do either. It wasn't easy for me to find a job. Don't make trouble for me. If I lose the job, you will have to support me. Stay at home for a few more years. When I become a shopkeeper and my salary is high, I'll bring you there. Madame Wei was furious and stormed out of the room. At this moment, Gu Yundong, who had already left the Chen family, was walking very slowly. She would occasionally look around. Love rivals meet. Gu Dajiang found it strange. Didn't you say that it's getting late? The weather is so hot. Let's go back quickly. Gu Yundong was a little disappointed that she did not see the person she wanted to see. Seeing that Miss Gu Yunke was feeling so hot that she was fanning herself with her small hands, her heart ached. She quickened her pace. Let's go. I'll make you something delicious when we get back. The little girl instantly felt no heat and nodded with bright eyes. What is it? It's cold. When her family built the house, they had dug an ice house. Some ice was stored in the winter. Although it was not much, it was enough to make some snacks. The little girl immediately grabbed her hand, wanting to get home as soon as possible. Gu Yundong had no choice but to let her pull along. Unexpectedly, after taking a few steps, a person suddenly walked over. Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes and stopped. Uncle Jiang. When Jiang Yongkong heard the voice, he first looked at Gu Yundong and Gu Yunke, then at Gu Dajiang and Madame Yang, who were standing behind them. Before he could say anything, he heard Gu Yundong's smiling voice. Father, this is Uncle Jiang. He lives in town and is staying in our village for the time being. Gu Dajiang looked at her strangely. He had met many villagers before, but most of them were only greeted with smiles. It was abnormal to introduce someone who wasn't from Yongfu village so seriously. However, he was able to stay calm. He nodded at Jiang Yongkong. Brother Jiang, come to my house when you're free. Jiang Yongkong felt that his throat was blocked, and he couldn't say a word. Along the way, almost everyone in the village was talking about Gu Yundong's father. They were talking about how tall and handsome he was, how refined and elegant he was, and how the family was happy and warm. These words rang in Jiang Yongkang's ears, especially ear-piercing. He sneered in his heart. These people really knew how to exaggerate. Happy? Handsome? If this man was really so good, would he have taken a fancy to Madame Yang? Would he have so much patience for a fool? In order to enter the Gu family's workshop, these villagers did not even care about their integrity. Their flattery was simply unbearable. Jiang Yongkong was very dissatisfied and unconvinced. He even went to the Zheng family to ask around. Unexpectedly, Zheng Hu said that this family had come to the village chief's house, so Jiang Yongkong rushed back. As expected, he bumped into the Gu family. However, he realized that the villagers were not exaggerating at all. This Gu Dajiang was younger than him, more knowledgeable, and taller than him. Moreover, he seemed to be really good to Madame Yang, and the way she looked at him was filled with dependence. Jiang Yongkong was furious at that moment, but there were 4 people standing opposite him. He could only suppress his anger and force a smile. You must be Brother Gu. I didn't believe it when I heard that you were back. I didn't expect it to be true. Yes, our family is finally reunited, Gu Dajiang said as he looked at Madame Yang gently. Madame Yang also turned around to look at him, her eyes seemingly shining. Jiang Yongkong clenched his fists and almost cursed. Gu Yundong had been secretly observing his expression. Seeing him like this, what could she not be sure of? Jiang Yongkong had indeed taken a fancy to her mother and wanted to seize the Gu family's assets. What a wishful thinking. After exchanging a few pleasantries, Gu Dajiang left with his wife and children. Only Jiang Yongkong stood at the back, his expression changing. I have something to ask you. After a long time, he finally waved his hand. Ignoring the scorching sun above his head, he turned around and strode towards the village entrance. Gu Yundong glanced at the direction he had left from the corner of her eye, and her mouth curled up slightly. She heard a cough behind her. She subconsciously turned her head and met Gu Dajiang's meaningful expression. What's going on? Talk to me after we're home. Gu Yundong laughed dryly. Her father was indeed her father. His acuity was not something to be taken lightly. With such a father around, Gu Yundong did not hide it. When she returned home, she told him her guess. Gu Dajiang's expression instantly darkened. You should have told me earlier. I could have beaten him up just now. He sneered, feeling extremely disgusted. Such a person actually dared to covet his wife and wanted to snatch his assets? Such an ugly guy. Gu Yundong clicked her tongue. She did not expect her father to be a belligerent person. Since you already know his scheme, what do you plan to do next? Gu Yundong said, let's take another look and see if my other guess is right. She thought that if her deduction was correct, Jiang Yongkong should have already left the village and gone to town. Indeed, he rushed all the way under the sun and finally arrived at the entrance of the town after noon. At this moment his mouth was very dry. Coupled with his anger, his expression was especially ugly. Therefore, he did not notice that there was a man and a woman sitting in a tea shop at the entrance of the town. They faced the direction of the town and narrowed their eyes when they saw him. Miss is right. He really came. Tong Shuitao lowered her voice and covered half of her face, as if she was afraid that Jiang Yongkong would recognize her. Shui Rong, who was sitting beside her, was very calm. He took a sip of tea and said slowly, he came a little later than expected. Yes, I've already drunk a few cups of tea. Tong Shuitao originally wanted to eat something to fill her stomach, but now that it was filled with water, she decided to forget it. On the other side, Jiang Yongkong didn't even have the time to drink tea. He wiped his sweat and continued walking. Tong Shuitao quickly pushed Shui Rong. Hurry up and follow him. Okay, wait here. Shui Rong stood up and slowly followed Jiang Yongkong. He had just arrived at Yongfu village and was a stranger. Jiang Yongkong had never seen him before. Even if they met face to face, he would not know that Shui Rong was from the Gu family. Therefore, he walked openly. No one would think that he was following someone at this moment. Jiang Yongkong was even less energetic after a long journey. He turned corners in the town with familiarity. After walking for about 15 minutes, he finally stopped outside a small courtyard. Shui Rong stood at the corner and casually glanced over. Jiang Yongkong knocked on the door for a while and heard footsteps coming from inside. After a while, the door opened. When the person saw that it was him, he was stunned for a moment, but his voice was filled with dissatisfaction. Why are you here? You even came over so openly. Are you afraid that others want gossip? Cut the crap. Let me in first. I have something to ask you. Jiang Yongkong pushed that person away and strode into the courtyard. That person was dissatisfied and his face was filled with anger. However, since things had already come to this, he could only look outside the door angrily. Fortunately, it was very hot at this hour. There was no one outside, and the street was empty. No one should have seen Jiang Yongkong when he entered just now. Collusion. After the courtyard door closed, the man turned around and followed Jiang Yongkong in. Jiang Yongkong's expression was ugly. When he entered the house, he realized that there was another person inside. He immediately snorted. You're here too? That's good. It saves me a lot of time. Why are you here? Shouldn't you be in Yongfu village? Xiulan stood up and frowned. She looked a little uneasy. Madame Fang, who came in later, also muttered unhappily, that's right. You came over at noon. Do you still want to come to my house for lunch? She had always been stingy, especially when she had spent a lot of money in town. She was even more unwilling to pour him tea. Jiang Yongkong's already anxious mood was completely ignited by her words. Pfft, do you think everyone is like you? You don't have money and love face, yet you're still so stingy. You married a daughter and came to town with her. You look like you want to be raised by her in-laws. Madame Fang was so angry that she almost couldn't breathe. She pointed at Jiang Yongkong with a trembling finger. What did you say? All right, what are you arguing about? Qingyuan frowned. She was very frustrated. She stood between the two of them and said, What's going on? Uncle Jiang, did something happen when you came to town at this hour? Is Gu Yundong back? Jiang Yongkong immediately shifted his gaze, but his anger did not diminish. You still dare to say that? She's back. Not only is she back, but she also brought her father back. Madame Fang and her daughter were stunned. How is that possible? How is that impossible? I saw Gu Dajiang with my own eyes before I came. Now, everyone in Yongfu village knows that he's back. His family has reunited and is harmonious. It has nothing to do with us." Madame Fang opened her mouth and looked at Qingyuan in disbelief. The latter shook his head in a daze and fell into a chair. She muttered softly, "How is that possible? Back then, Gu Xiener clearly told me that Gu Dajiang was already dead. On the way to escape, his father, Gu Dai, lured all the bandits to Gu Dajiang's side to escape. There were more than 10 bandits. How could Gu Dajiang have survived?" Yes, although Qingyuan had only met Gu Xiener once, the two of them hated Gu Yundong to the core and did not want her to have an easy time. That was why they wanted to cause trouble together. It was Gu Xiener's idea to get someone to seduce Madame Yang. After all, Gu Xiener knew better. She had told Qingyuan that Gu Dajiang was already dead. Madame Yang was a fool, and a very stubborn fool at that. As long as she was settled, there would be no problem with Gu Yundong. But at that time, Gu Xiener did not know that Gu Yundong was a completely different person. Not to mention Madame Yang, even if she could deal with Yunshu and Yunke, it would be useless. However, Qingyuan was interested. She hated Gu Yundong and coveted the Gu family's assets, especially that green brick house. She even dreamed of living in it. She felt that this plan was feasible and discussed it with Madame Fang when she returned. The two of them felt that they could give it a try. After some thought, they realized that Zhao Dafa from the village was not bad. His wife was gone and he looked tall and mighty. His family background was also all right. Of course, they also knew that Zhao Dafa always hid his wife. Unexpectedly, when Zhao Dafa heard that he had to get close to the Gu family, he didn't even hear the whole story and directly rejected it. The fact that Gu Yundong had beaten up 4 hoodlums had completely frightened Zhao Dafa. Chapter 535. Perhaps Gu Dajiang is fake. Madame Fang and her daughter were furious, but at the same time, they understood that it was unrealistic to look for someone in the village. Qingyuan wanted to see Gu Xiener again and ask her for an idea. However, Gu Xiener couldn't leave the Peng family at all. Later on, Qingyuan heard that she had become Peng Zongfei's concubine and couldn't even see her. She didn't know if she was dead or alive. Madame Fang and her daughter could only put this plan on hold until Qingyuan married into the Wu family in town. The town was not big. Madame Fang had bumped into Jiang Yongkong by accident. At that time, he was chatting with a married woman. Although it was called a chat, it was actually an indistinct seduction. The woman even gave him a small gold ring. Madame Fang's eyes lit up. This woman's husband was a refined and handsome man. His family background was not bad either. With such a husband, the woman was actually seduced by Jiang Yongkong and even gave him money. What did it mean? This meant that Jiang Yongkong was very good at coaxing women. In addition, he looked like a scholar. Wasn't he similar to Gu Dajiang? Madame Fang went back and told Qingyuan. The two of them found Jiang Yongkong and told him about the Gu family's situation. They hit it off almost immediately. Jiang Yongkong heard that the Gu family had a workshop and a shop, more than 100 acres of fields, and a unique green brick house in the village. There was no adult man in the family. As long as he hooked up with Madame Yang, wouldn't everything be his? So what if Madame Yang was a fool? Fools were easy to trick. The only one who was difficult to deal with was Gu Yundong. But she was just a young lady who had yet to reach adulthood. He had been running amok among women for so many years. Could he not deal with her? However, the truth was completely beyond his expectations. There were servants in the Gu family. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens for him to get close to Madame Yang. However, after seeing the Gu family's assets, he was still indignant. He had to give it a try. However, after so long, he still did not make any progress. Jiang Yongkong was furious. The information you gave me was wrong. Gu Dajiang is alive and well. You're wasting my time. Don't push the blame onto us. Why don't you say that you're useless? It's been half a year. You can't even take down a fool, yet you still dare to say that you are the ladies' man. If you hadn't delayed and taken down Madame Yang before Gu Dajiang returned, the Gu family would have been ours long ago. Gu Dajiang wouldn't have had anything to do with it. Madame Fang sneered and felt a little regretful. Perhaps this person was not capable to begin with. She had misjudged him. Jiang Yongkang's face turned red. He almost wanted to hit her. It's easy for you to say. If you have the ability, go close to the Gu family and see if you'll be beaten out. Xiulan felt dizzy from the noise. All right, why are you still arguing at a time like this? Jiang Yongkang sneered. Then tell me, what should we do now? Qingyuan frowned. I think something's wrong. Why did Gu Dajiang come back at this time? Are you sure it's Gu Dajiang? Could it be a fake? The two of them were stunned. That's impossible, right? Why not? Other than Gu Yundong's family, who else in the village knows Gu Dajiang? If they find someone outside and say that it's him, no one will suspect him. Xiulan sneered and said, Anyway, Uncle Jiang, you go back first. I'll go back to the village with Mother tomorrow to take a look. Jiang Yongkang could only nod. Chapter 536, Passion of the Long Workers. No one knew that at this moment, under the window outside their house, a person was leaning against the wall in boredom, listening to the conversation between the three of them clearly. Shui Rong knocked on the house next door and gave that person a tael of silver. He told the other party that he was here to catch the adulterer. Then, he climbed over the wall of this house and entered Madame Fang's courtyard. Madame Fang had just moved here not long ago and was a widow. She was also a calculative person and naturally did not have a good relationship with the woman next door, who could not wait for her to be extremely unlucky and let Shui Rong in without a word. Shui Rong waited until Jiang Yongkang left with Madame Fang and her daughter before returning to the courtyard next door. The woman next door said excitedly, Young man, you're right. That Madame Fang is indeed restless. I secretly opened the courtyard door just now and saw a man sneaking out of the courtyard. Shui Rong smiled at her. There's not enough evidence this time. It's not to the point of catching them in the act. Please keep it a secret for me and don't leak it. It'll definitely teach them a lesson next time. Okay. Don't worry. I promise I won't tell anyone. The woman even made an oath and agreed readily. Her eyes flickered with a gloating light. Only then did Shui Rong quietly leave the courtyard. When he returned to the tea shop at the entrance of the town, Tong Shuitao immediately welcomed him. How did it go? Did you see Jiang Yongkang leave? Tong Shuitao shook her head. No. It made sense. This person had rushed to town without eating lunch or drinking water. He should be tired, hungry, and thirsty. It was more important to find a place to eat first. Then let's go back first. The two of them came in a carriage and did not need much time to return to Yongfu village. When they reached home, Gu Yundong was taking Gu Dajiang to the workshop to see how everyone was doing. At this time, there were already a lot more fruits. The 50 long-term workers in the workshop were all busy. As the Gu family only had one shop, although they also cooperated with the Liu family's restaurant, they could still meet the demand. When she opened the shop in the prefecture capital later, there would be too few people. When the time came, she would have to recruit people. When they saw Gu Yundong, everyone greeted her warmly. After knowing Gu Dajiang's identity, they congratulated him and said that her family's hardships had finally come to an end. Gu Dajiang sighed when he saw this scene. Who would have thought that in such a short period of time, his family had gone from being a pitiful worm that was bullied by the old Gu family to one that now had a house, land, and even long-term workers. They walked around the workshop and Gu Yundong asked about the situation. She learned that everything was fine. Not long ago, during the Dragon Boat Festival, the workshop had distributed a lot of meat dumplings for everyone to eat. This was Gu Yundong's idea. On some special days, there would be a festive atmosphere. Even if there were not many things and they were not expensive, everyone would be more motivated in such an atmosphere. Therefore, when she left Yongfu village previously, she instructed Tong in to get someone to buy some meat dumplings on the day of the Dragon Boat Festival. Everyone was very happy about this. They praised the Gu family's workshop fiercely, causing many people in the nearby villages to be envious. They asked when the Gu family's workshop would recruit more workers. Now that Gu Yundong was back, someone quickly took the opportunity to ask, Boss Gu, is our workshop still hiring? Chapter 537. He's waiting at home. That's right, Boss Gu. When are we going to hire again? My younger brother from my maternal family is a capable person. He's very honest and diligent. He heard that the Gu family's workshop is great. He really wants to come. He asked me several times if it was recruiting. My maternal cousin is the same. He says he has endless energy and can do dirty and tiring work. Yes. My cousin-in-law also said that she wants to try. Everyone present had relatives. Since they had such a good job, they naturally wanted to help their families. It was best if everyone was good. Gu Yundong waited for them to finish asking before he smiled and said, "Indeed, we will recruit people again. After some time, you can ask your brothers, sisters, or cousins to give it a try. But I must state beforehand that my requirements are very strict. Of course, if they don't match, just don't use them." That's right. We came in with our own abilities. We can't let people who don't work hard come in to fool around. Gu Yundong said goodbye to them before leaving the workshop with Gu Dajiang. On the way back, Gu Dajiang's face was filled with obvious joy. "Father, do you want to go to the orchard to take a look?" When they reached home, Gu Yundong took a sip of water and asked. Gu Dajiang shook his head. "We'll go another day. Your mother is tired after half a day." Gu Yundong almost choked on the water. No, she felt that it was better to stay away from them. She was afraid that she would be stuffed to death sooner or later if she were to eat dog food after every few words. Gu Yundong waved her hand and hurried out of the central room. Then, she saw Shui Rong and Tong Shui Tao, who had returned. "Did you find out?" she asked as she walked up to them. Shui Rong nodded and lowered his voice. "Miss, you're right. Jiang Yongkong did go to town in a hurry to meet Madame Fang and her daughter." He recounted everything he had seen and heard along the way. Gu Yundong sneered. "So, they will come to Yongfu village tomorrow?" "Yes." "Sure, just in time." Gu Yundong could not understand what was wrong with Madame Fang and her daughter's brains. Why did they think that Jiang Yongkong could claim the Gu family? Their intelligence was indeed not presentable. Gu Yundong clicked her tongue. He turned around and realized that Gu Dajiang was standing behind him. "Father, did you hear everything?" "Yeah." "Are you still going to Yuanzhi's school tomorrow?" "That can wait. They'll wait at home tomorrow and see what they want." Gu Yundong felt that her father's murderous aura was not as simple as he said, right? "Dad, don't tell me you really want to beat up Jiang Yongkong?" Gu Dajiang turned around and returned to his room. He didn't deny it. Did he really want to attack? Gu Yundong rubbed her forehead. As he wanted to find trouble with Jiang Yongkong, Gu Dajiang didn't mention going to school the next day. After Yunshu and Yuanzhi left, he waited at home. However, no one came. Gu Dajiang couldn't sit still, so he got up and left the Gu residence. This place was close to the foot of the mountain. In the past, there were not many people. Now that there was the Gu family workshop and 2 large green brick houses erected, it was like the landmark of the village. There were a lot of people. However, there was no one around at this time. At the thought of the green brick house, Gu Dajiang's gaze landed on another building not far away. She snorted coldly in her heart and was about to avert her gaze when the courtyard door suddenly opened. Chapter 538. The wrong person. Immediately after, a tall figure walked out. Gu Dajiang narrowed his eyes and looked over. He felt that this person was handsome, but his clothes were too eye-catching. This was Shao Qingyuan? How could a farmer's boy dress up like this when he was walking around his village? Sure enough, with some money, he started to become arrogant and pretend to take himself seriously. Gu Dajiang snorted coldly. That person ran over excitedly and shouted happily, "Yundong, I heard that you're back?" Gu Dajiang's face darkened. Not only was he dressed inappropriately, but he also looked unreliable. Why would his daughter fall for such a person? Gu Dajiang took a deep breath and stepped in front of him. Liu Wei was stunned for a moment. He looked at the completely unfamiliar man in front of him in surprise. He blinked and asked, "Uncle, who are you? Why are you blocking me?" "You're Shao Qingyuan?" Gu Dajiang felt that he had to confirm it first before deciding how he should treat him. Liu Wei was surprised. He wanted to shake his head subconsciously, but he quickly reacted. The man in front of him was very unfamiliar, but his eyes revealed strong hostility and contempt. Oh, where did this crappy old man come from? He actually dared to look down on his brother and wanted to harm him? Liu Wei snorted coldly, raised his chin slightly and said very loyally, "So what if I am?" "So what?" Dajiang really wanted to slap him. This person wasn't a good person. He took himself seriously just because he had some money. He was rude and arrogant. If Yundong married him in the future, wouldn't she be bullied to death? He glared at Liu Wei. "Hurry up and get lost." "But who do you think you are? How dare you tell me to get lost?" Liu Wei was in disbelief. Where did this idiot come from? It was fine if he didn't know him, but he actually dared to chase him away on his territories? Liu Wei did not know that Gu Yundong's father had returned. He had heard from Yuanzhi that Gu Yundong had returned when he was buying canned food at Gus yesterday. He was too excited and did not hear the rest of the sentence, so he hurriedly planned to come over. After all, she had gone out for a while. When she came back, she would definitely bring a gift for her good friend. Liu Wei didn't feel embarrassed or guilty at all for taking the initiative to ask for a gift. This morning he came to Yongfu village in a hurry. As usual, he went to the Shao family first to look for Shao Qingyuan, but he was not around. Liu Wei turned around and left the house. Then he ran towards the Gu residence. However, he did not expect that there would be a door guardian at the entrance of the Gu residence. Moreover, it was a super unreasonable door guardian. His temper was rising. "Do you know what price the person who told me to scram last time paid? Let me tell you, the grass on his grave is already as tall as you. If you know what's good for you, quickly move aside. Otherwise, do you believe that it'll break your legs?" Seriously, where did this lunatic come to the Gu family to behave atrociously? Dajiang was so angry that he almost fell backward. He took 2 steps forward and pushed him impatiently in the direction of the Shao family. "Just get lost. Don't show off in front of me. Even if you have some money, you're calling yourself young master? Let me tell you, this is forgetting your roots. I won't agree to my daughter's marriage with you." Liu Wei was caught off guard and was really pushed back more than 10 steps by him. It was not easy for him to stabilize himself, and smoke almost came out of his head. "Who wants to marry your daughter? Don't flatter yourself." Chapter 539. Breaking his head. Dajiang felt that he had pushed him far enough. He immediately retracted his hand and ignored him. He turned around and returned to the Gu family. Liu Wei felt that he was being looked down upon like never before. He even raised his fist. Where did this lunatic come from? It's simply ridiculous. Let me tell you. A low cry suddenly came from behind. Liu Wei was stunned. He realized that he had swung his fist too hard just now and hit the person behind him. He immediately turned around and saw the woman he had hit covering her face and retreating. She accidentally stepped on a rock and fell backward. "Be careful." Liu Wei reflexively reached out and grabbed her waist to prevent her from falling to the ground. When Dajiang heard the commotion behind him, he turned his head and happened to see this scene. He was instantly infuriated. It was fine if he was unreliable and rude, but now that he was clearly engaged to Yundong, he was still hugging another woman. What was wrong with him? Dajiang looked around. He wanted to find a stick to smash his head. Liu Wei did not know that his life was about to be in danger. He steadied the woman's body and wanted to let go of her. Unexpectedly, the other party grabbed his clothes tightly with a frightened expression. "Liu Wei, young Master Liu, thank you." The woman's voice was like a mosquito's, with a trace of shock. Liu Wei trembled unconsciously and hurriedly let go of her. The woman looked up. Only then did he feel that she looked familiar. It was just that he couldn't remember where he had seen her before. But he apologized anyway. "I hit you just now. I'm sorry. It's not young Master Liu's fault. I stood behind young Master Liu rashly. I just wanted to greet young Master Liu. I didn't expect this to happen." Liu Wei frowned. "If you want to greet me, so be it. Why were you standing behind me pretending to be a ghost?" However, it was good that the other party was fine. He took 2 steps back and was about to leave when another woman walked out. Liu Wei also felt that she looked a little familiar. He just couldn't remember where he had seen them before. Strange, when did his memory become so bad? Madame Fang and her daughter were very happy to see him. Although Qingyuan was married, she still couldn't help but be interested in a young master like Liu Wei. She was a little surprised to be hit by him while standing behind him, but it was true that she wanted to get close to him. Unexpectedly, he actually hugged her. Madame Fang, who had arrived a step later, frowned and bumped into her, signaling her with her eyes not to forget her identity. However, Qingyuan felt very aggrieved. She had known young Master Liu for a long time and had interacted with him before she got married. Young Master Liu had a good impression of her and his attitude was very good. At that time, as long as she worked hard, she might be able to become the young madam of the Liu family. Unfortunately, Madame Fang disagreed. Liu Wei didn't know what Qingyuan was thinking. Otherwise, he would have vomited blood. Shui Rong heard the commotion outside the door. When he saw Liu Wei acting like a rich second-generation heir and heard him admit that he was Shao Qingyuan, he had a bad feeling. He quickly ran in to tell Gu Yundong. Thus, when Gu Yundong came out, she saw that her father had finally found a stick. He walked angrily towards Liu Wei and raised his hand, wanting to beat him up. Gu Yundong gasped and hurriedly shouted, "Father, stop." Chapter 540. He can bend and stretch with a thick skin. Gu Dajiang's raised hand paused. Liu Wei suddenly turned around and saw the stick that was inches away. He immediately screamed and jumped to the side. You're indeed a lunatic. You actually still want to hit me. Do you really think I'm weakling? As he spoke, Liu Wei was about to make a move. However, Gu Yundong suddenly rushed over and slapped his hand away. "What are you doing? He's my father." She knew that Liu Wei had practiced martial arts. Although he only had amateur martial arts skills, it was more than enough to deal with the weak Gu Dajiang. Liu Wei almost fell to the ground. When he stabilized himself, his eyes widened in shock. His fingers trembled fiercely, and he looked like he was about to go crazy. What did you say? This lunatic is your father? Liu Wei, what did you say? Liu Wei suddenly took a step back, but he still looked incredulous. On the other hand, Gu Dajiang snorted and said to Gu Yundong, "I knew it. He's unreliable. You shouldn't marry a man like him. You were indeed lying to me about his advantages of maturity and stability. How is he reliable?" As he spoke, he turned to look at Liu Wei. "Shao Qingyuan, if you want to marry my daughter, do it in your next life." Gu Yundong was speechless. What happened? Liu Wei was speechless. Wait. Did he do something wrong to hurt his brother again? Fortunately, Gu Yundong was quick-witted and immediately reacted. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Father, he's not Shao Qingyuan." "What? But he said he was." He glared at Liu Wei with a look that said, "I dare you to deny it." This time, Liu Wei's brain finally functioned normally. He immediately took a step back and bowed 90 degrees to Gu Dajiang. He said sincerely, "Uncle, I was wrong. I failed to recognize you and didn't speak properly. I'm worse than a beast. If you want to hit or scold me, just do it. Please teach me seriously so that I won't make the same mistake again." Gu Dajiang was speechless. What kind of people had he met recently? Could it be that everyone who was related to Shao Qingyuan had such a thick skin? The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. Liu Wei's cultivation level had increased by another level. It seemed that in the past few months when she was not around, he had really improved. Looking at Gu Dajiang's furious expression, she finally touched her forehead and said in a low voice, "Father, this is Liu Wei, the young master of the Liu family." Gu Dajiang was stunned. Of course, he had heard of Liu Wei. When Gu Yundong mentioned this friend, she sounded very happy and comfortable. It was said that he was an outgoing young master who did not put on any airs. Old Master Liu had also taught Yundong a lot of business matters. Second young Master Liu was also Yuanzhi's classmate. For their sake, Gu Dajiang had a good impression of Liu Wei. However, these good impressions were completely shattered during their meeting and conversation just now. He couldn't help but sigh. He glanced at Liu Wei and said angrily, "All right, if there's anything, let's talk inside." Stop making a fuss. Who calls a woman's maiden name at the entrance? Yes, you're right. I won't do it again. Gu Dajiang had no temper towards such people. He turned around and left. Seeing this, Liu Wei heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly followed. Madame Fang and her daughter stayed where they were. What about us? Chapter 541. Two touching Gu Yundong seemed to have just discovered the mother and daughter. She turned around in surprise. Aunt Fang, why are you here? Madame Fang's eyes twitched. We've always been here. Really? I'm sorry, I didn't notice just now. Gu Yundong smiled sweetly and sincerely. However, Madame Fang and her daughter felt that she was very detestable. She was clearly ignoring them on purpose. However, when she thought of her motive for coming today, Madame Fang suppressed the anger in her heart and squeezed out a smile. She said politely, "Your eyes were on young Master Liu. No wonder you didn't see us. By the way, this is..." She glanced at Gu Dajiang and asked. Gu Yundong found it funny. Didn't this woman hear her call him father just now? The woman even had an innocent expression on her face. Aunt Fang, you're a widow. Isn't it inappropriate for you to ask about a man's identity? Madame Fang was speechless. She really hated Gu Yundong. Chen awkwardly changed the topic. Mother, you're too much. Didn't Yundong call him father just now? He must be Uncle Gu. As she spoke, she smiled and called out to Gu Dajiang. However, she quickly revealed a puzzled expression. But Yundong, didn't I hear that Uncle Gu went missing? How did you find Uncle Gu? Gu Yundong looked at her with a faint smile. How did I find him? Actually, I didn't find him. My father has been looking for us. My father is a person who values friendship and loyalty. Ever since he lost contact with us, he hasn't eaten a full meal or slept well. He took out all the money on him to find out the whereabouts of his wife and children. Sigh, the heavens don't let down hardworking people. After a lot of hardship and trouble, our family is finally reunited. Qingyuan's face was twisted. It was as if she didn't say anything. Liu Wei wiped the corners of his eyes. It's so touching. Gu Yundong. Gu Dajiang was speechless. Madame Fang and her daughter were even more speechless. Although the truth was quite touching, Gu Yundong's exaggerated expression and prolonged voice made it sound like she was reciting a book. Gu Yundong could not be bothered with Liu Wei's abundant feelings. She said to Madame Fang and her daughter, "If there's nothing else, well, go in first." Qingyuan wanted to stop her. This woman had no manners at all. They were already in front of her house, but she didn't intend to let them in. She didn't invite them to drink some sugar water before leaving. However, Gu Yundong pretended not to hear anything. She turned around and entered the door. When the door closed, she blocked Madame Fang and her daughter outside. The two of them stomped their feet in anger, but there was nothing they could do. They could only glare angrily at the door and turn around to leave. That Gu Dajiang is somewhat similar to Gu Yunshu. Could he really be Gu Yundong's biological father? As Qingyuan walked back, she knitted her brows and murmured, "How could it be so coincidental? Did they really find him? Mother, what should we do next? It won't be easy for Uncle Jiang to have any ideas about Gu Yundong's foolish mother. Even if he succeeds with Gu Dajiang around, the Gu family's assets won't fall into his hands. At most, Gu Dajiang will divorce Madame Yang and let her marry into the Jiang family." At the thought of this, Qingyuan felt very depressed. All the preparations she had made for so long were in vain. She kicked the stone under her feet in frustration. Suddenly, she realized that it had been very quiet beside her. She had said so much, but her mother did not reply. She turned around in surprise and looked at Madame Fang. "Mother, I'm talking to you. Did you hear me?" Chapter 542. Fond of Gu Dajiang. Madame Fang suddenly stopped in her tracks. It was unknown what she was thinking, but her eyes suddenly lit up with burning ambition. "Laner, that's Gu Dajiang, right?" Qingyuan blinked. "Yes, Gu Yundong calls him father." Madame Fang's smile gradually widened. "Gu Dajiang is quite good-looking. Moreover, I heard that he has studied before." He's a knowledgeable person. Chen Yulan knew her mother too well. When she heard this, how could she not understand what her mother was trying to do? But this was too whimsical. Mother, don't tell me you want to, Madame Fang glared at her. But can't I think about it? Gu Dajiang is talented, handsome, and so rich. Think about it. If we let Jiang Yongkang seduce Madame Yang, we'll have to split the Gu family's assets equally with him. But if Gu Dajiang and I achieve something, the entire Gu family will be ours. When I win over Gu Dajiang, Gu Yundong will have to listen to me and do whatever I tell her to do. Chen Yulan felt that this matter was unreliable. But Gu Yundong just said that Gu Dajiang values the mother and daughter very much. He even suffered a lot to find them. What do you know? Don't others say that the more you lack something, the more you stress it? Look at how confident she is. She's clearly afraid that others will see that Gu Dajiang doesn't care about them. That's deliberately for outsiders to see. With Madame Yang's appearance, which man has the patience to coax her? But this is just your guess, mother. What Chen Yulan didn't say was that regardless of whether Gu Dajiang really looked down on Madame Yang, at least she was good-looking. Although her mother was not bad, she was still far inferior to Madame Yang. However, on second thought, so what if Madame Yang was good-looking? She was a fool who did not even understand the relationship between a man and a woman. Men were the most impatient. They could still coax her for a day or two, but after a long time, they would probably be tired of her. Then, it was not a bad idea to let her mother try. I'm just afraid that it won't be easy to get rid of Uncle Jiang. Madame Fang waved her hand. It's fine. I'll talk to him. Chen Yulan did not say anything else. The two of them returned to Chen Liang's house with their own thoughts. Now that Madame Fang's courtyard had been rented to Jiang Yongkang, they naturally had to stay at Chen Liang's house. Not only the two of them, but Chen Yulan's husband, Wu Chong, was also present. He was talking to Chen Liang and the others. The Wu family also opened a small shop in town. In the beginning, Wu Chong and Chen Yulan were engaged because of Chen Jincai. After all, at that time, Chen Jincai was still a small manager in the workshop in town. Although there were few people he was in charge of, he still had a little power in his hands. For example, the goods his shop had to buy were partly decided by him in terms of price and time. Who knew that Chen Jincai would be sent home as soon as he got married to Chen Yulan? He could only be considered a farmer now. It was said that he had to work in the fields every day. Now that he looked at it, didn't the man's hands and face look much rougher? In the past, when Chen Jincai saw him, Chen Jincai always held his head high and was extremely confident. Occasionally, he would teach Wu Chong as his wife's uncle and even warn him not to bully Chen Yulan. Wu Chong was actually very unhappy. He was just a small manager. Did he really treat himself as an elder? Now that he saw Chen Jincai again, he suddenly had a sense of superiority. So what if he was his wife's uncle? So what if he was older than him? Wasn't he just a farmer who buried his head in the fields every day? Chapter 543. The Chen family's displeasure. Wu Chong was proud in his heart, and he could not help but show it on his face. He was no longer as humble towards Chen Jincai as before. Instead, he looked like he did not think much of him. Although the in-law's eldest uncle was the village chief of Yongfu village, he could not reach into town. His eldest cousin was now a farmer, and his second cousin was said to be working in some workshop. Oh, right, it's a workshop in Yongfu village. It's not very promising. In Wu Chang's opinion, there was something wrong with the Chen father and son's brains. They actually degraded themselves to be long-term workers in the village's workshop. What were they thinking? Wu Chong felt that his in-laws could no longer help him. He didn't care much about Chen Yulan's visit today. However, he wanted to vent his secret pride. He just wanted to see Chen Jincai's miserable state. Unexpectedly, Chen Jincai was different from what he had imagined. He seemed to be very happy with the hoe. Wu Chong could not vent the joy in his heart, so his face remained dark. Chen Yulan came back at this time. When Wu Chong saw her, he wanted to return to town as soon as possible. He didn't even want to stay for dinner. However, Chen Yulan didn't agree. Mom isn't back yet. Let's have lunch before we leave. I saw that eldest aunt and sister-in-law are busy in the kitchen. It's not good to leave just like that. Madame Wei happened to hear this when she came in with a teapot to add water to them. She pursed her lips secretly. When she returned to the kitchen, she could not help but mutter to Madame Song. She knew that we were busy in the kitchen, but she didn't come in to help. Didn't you see that young master's eyes were almost rolling up to the sky? I didn't know before, but now I realize that he's just a superficial person. Madame Song snorted coldly. As she picked the vegetables, she said, "What's so strange about that? I already said that the Wu family is not a good match. Second aunt still thinks that I'm a busybody." The two sisters-in-law also had small conflicts on a daily basis, especially after they lived together at home. They often disliked each other. However, now that they were facing a common enemy, it was obvious that they really did not welcome the visitors. Madame Zhou berated, "All right, it's rare for her to come. It's only a meal. They'll leave after eating." Madame Wei muttered softly, "She's not willing to eat at our place. If it weren't for the fact that second aunt isn't back yet, they might have gone back." Madame Zhou paused. "His second aunt isn't back yet? Where did she go in such a short time? There's no family in the village that she's especially close to." She couldn't figure it out. Madame Fang didn't like to go out in the past. After Qingyuan got married, she only came back once or twice. At most, she would stay in their house and leave in less than 4 hours. This time, she said that she would accompany Xiulan to meet her friends, but Xiulan was already back. Where else could Madame Fang go? Madame Zhou and the others did not know that Madame Fang, whom they had missed, was at home not far from them. Not only her, but Jiang Yongkong was also at home. At this moment, the two of them were criticizing each other without showing any weakness. Madame Fang wanted to push the blame to him. "Gu Dajiang is indeed back. You haven't made any progress for so long. It's too late to do anything now. Let's not waste time and return to town." Jiang Yongkong was so angry that he wanted to laugh. "Alright, they'll go back then. Where's the money? I spent so much time and I've stayed in this lousy place in the countryside for so long that I have lost weight twice. I can't possibly not get any benefits, right?" The two of them were so engrossed in their fight that they did not notice that someone was hiding outside with a cloth bag in his hand. Chapter 544. Something must have happened. Tong Ping did not follow Madame Fang to collect the fruits today. After receiving Gu Yundong's instructions, he quietly followed behind Madame Fang. When he saw her enter the courtyard, he sneaked to the back of the house when no one was looking. The wall here was much shorter, and one of the parts had collapsed. It was accidentally pushed down by too many people on Qingyuan's wedding day. Madame Fang didn't repair it. Anyway, she was going to live in town. Although Jiang Yongkong moved in later, this wasn't his house, so he wasn't willing to pay so much money to repair it. Anyway, this was the backyard, so it didn't affect him much. Now, the wall was convenient for Tong Ping. With a little force, he quietly climbed in. Hearing the low-pitched argument coming from the house, Tong Ping shook the cloth bag in his hand and chuckled. After a while, not only did he hear the quarrel in the house, but he also heard the sound of footsteps coming from outside the courtyard. He knew that the time had come. He opened the cloth bag and pulled out a snake. The snake was emerald green in color, slender and long, about 1 meter long. At this moment, it was being dragged by Tong Ping, and it even wriggled a little uneasily. Tong Ping smiled. While the people inside were still talking, he stuffed the snake into the window. The snake's color was very conspicuous. Almost as soon as it appeared, the people in the room noticed it. A terrified scream sounded as expected. Tong Ping covered his mouth and laughed, but soon frowned. "That's not right. Why is it a male voice?" He secretly looked inside and his mouth twitched. In the room, Jiang Yongkang's face was pale. He pointed at the snake and quickly pounced into Madame Fang's arms. Cold sweat dripped down, and his lips trembled. "Snake, snake, how can there be a snake? Quickly chase it away, quickly chase it away." His terrified voice was unidentifiable as he hugged Madame Fang tightly. Madame Fang almost couldn't breathe. Compared to his scream of fear, Madame Fang was much calmer. Although she was a woman and usually did not go to the fields, she was not a lazy person. Sometimes, snakes would slither in her courtyard. She was already used to encountering snakes, insects, rats, and ants in the countryside. Although she was shocked by the sudden appearance of this snake at first, she quickly calmed down after seeing it clearly. Let go. What are you afraid of? This is an emerald green snake. It's not poisonous and is especially timid. Look, it's frightened by. Jiang Yongkong shook his head desperately. He didn't hear what she said at all. He felt that his heart was about to jump out of his chest. He closed his eyes and didn't even look. Hurry up and chase it away. I told you that I can't stay in this countryside. I won't come to this godforsaken place again. He had lived in town since he was young. He was not afraid of encountering a rat, but he was afraid of this slippery thing. Madame Fang's eyes lit up. He was so afraid of snakes, so she could use it to threaten him to return to town quickly. She thought quickly in her heart, but she didn't know that at this moment, a few people were passing by the entrance of their courtyard and happened to hear Jiang Yongkang scream, which was so loud that it almost shook the roof. The people who were about to pass by trembled and looked at each other. One of them immediately said worriedly, "It seems to be Brother Jiang's voice. He's screaming so badly. Could something have happened? Something must have happened. Maybe a thief broke in. Let's go in and take a look." Chapter 545. Revealing the adultery. The few of them immediately became anxious and went to push open the courtyard door without saying anything. The door was pushed open. No one thought too much about it. After all, it was broad daylight, and no one locked the courtyard in the countryside. As they entered the courtyard, they heard frightened voices coming from the room on the left. Everyone became even more worried. They rushed over and pushed open the door. "Brother Jiang, why are you?" He stopped mid-sentence. Everyone at the door looked at the two people hugging each other in shock. They did not even notice the green snake slithering away through the door in fear. At this moment, Jiang Yongkong was so afraid that he even placed his legs on Madame Fang's waist. Madame Fang could not withstand his weight and fell back onto the bed. In addition, she wanted to push him away and make him let go of her. Their clothes were loose and even their breathing was messy. In everyone's eyes, these two people were doing shameless things in broad daylight. The people at the door couldn't help but gasp. Madame Fang and Jiang Yongkong were also stunned. Their faces instantly turned pale, and there was only one thought in their minds: it was over. Both sides seemed to have come to a standstill until someone's sharp voice sounded. "You, the guy from Qingyuan's family, what are you doing?" Madame Fang trembled and Jiang Yongkong finally let go of her. Hearing this question, he hurriedly explained, "You've misunderstood. There's nothing between me and sister-in-law Chen. Just now, a snake came in. I was afraid, so I lost control." "Oh, who would believe that?" Soon, a mocking voice sounded. "A snake? Where is the snake? Why didn't we see it? Besides, even if there is a snake, it's a fact that you're in the same room. Could it be that the snake chased you into the room together?" Jiang Yongkong was speechless for a moment. He explained awkwardly, "We have something to discuss, so what important matter do you have to discuss in the room alone? Tell us." What else can it be? A man and a woman in the same room. Don't tell everyone that you don't know what it is. It's a big matter of giving birth." Ha. The two women echoed each other. Madame Fang looked at them. These two were just two gossipy women who usually didn't get along with her. Why did she have to see them? What should he say? How should he explain? Madame Fang's mind went blank for a moment, not knowing what to do. Jiang Yongkong was also so anxious that his head was covered in sweat. He couldn't say anything and could only deny it without any confidence. "You've really misunderstood. We're fine. It's just that sister-in-law Fang wanted to go home to get something." "Yes, she wanted to go home to get something, so we ran into each other. Later, we encountered a snake, so we became like this out of fear." However, this explanation was not convincing at all. She came back to get something? Why did she come over personally? I heard that her son-in-law came over today. She knew that there was a man living at her home, so she should let her son-in-law come over to get it. I think it's clearly the two of you meeting here privately, right? I couldn't tell, Madame Fang. Everyone thought that you had kept your chastity for your Qingyuan for so many years. I didn't expect you to have a lover long ago. No wonder Jiang Yongkong stayed at Madame Fang's house when there were so many choices. It turns out that he knew her long ago. Madame Fang's ears were buzzing and she felt a little lightheaded. She subconsciously wanted to tell the truth. No, we didn't. We were just discussing how to. Chapter 546. Discussing the marriage. Before she could finish speaking, a raised voice suddenly came from outside. Mother, what's going on? The people by the door turned around and saw Chen Liang walking over with a dark expression. It was unknown who went to call him. Looking at Chen Liang's expression, he probably knew the gist of the matter. She was not the only one who came. The Chen family had also come. Madame Zhou felt that she had lost all her face, but this person was her sister-in-law. She could only take a few steps forward and pull Madame Fang to the side to keep a distance from Jiang Yongkong. At the same time, she tugged at her slightly torn clothes. Chen Yulan ran to Madame Fang's side, patted her back, and comforted her in a low voice. Madame Zhou stood to the side, unwilling to get involved with her. Chen Liang's heavy gaze landed on Jiang Yongkong. What exactly happened? Jiang Yongkong thought that since Chen Liang was Madame Fang's eldest uncle, he should be on her side, so he quickly told him the excuse he had just said. However, just as he finished speaking, someone sneered. Naturally, Chen Liang did not believe it. His expression darkened even more. His sharp gaze landed on Madame Fang. What did you come back for? Madame Fang stiffened and opened her mouth, unable to speak for a long time. She did not leave anything in the courtyard at all. When she moved to town, she packed everything and left. Where could she find something? She searched her clothes. Other than a handkerchief and a little silver, there was nothing else. Could it be that she would come back to find these two things? Not to mention that others did not believe her, even she did not believe it herself. However, Chen Liang had completely lost his patience. He suddenly shouted, "Speak!" Madame Fang was shocked and her mind started to be in a mess again. She opened her mouth and said, I didn't. We have something to discuss. Jiang Yongkong almost died from her stupidity. He had finally found an excuse, so she should have continued the story. Then, she would casually say that the things she wanted to take were gone for some reason. Could it be that Chen Liang, the eldest uncle, really dared to take his sister-in-law to the pond? Chen Liang's voice became even colder. Discuss what? We discussed. Before Madame Fang could finish, Qingyuan, who was hugging her, whispered in her ear, Mother, admit your relationship with Uncle Jiang. Madame Fang looked at her in shock, but Qingyuan was a little anxious. Are you really going to say that you're plotting against the Gu family? It's hard to say if others will believe it, but Gu Yundong will definitely settle scores with us. The Gu family is rich now, and young Master Liu is backing them up. They can crush us like ants. We can't have anything to do with them. Most importantly, if the Gu family's matter was brought up, she would definitely be implicated. At that time, everyone would know that she was vicious. How could the Wu family tolerate her? But Madame Fang was still hesitating. How could she admit to having a relationship with Jiang Yongkong? If she admitted it, what would happen to her in the future? However, Chen Yulan couldn't care less. Seeing that she didn't say anything for a long time, she simply said, My mother was indeed talking to Uncle Jiang. They were discussing their marriage. Madame Fang was stunned, and so was Jiang Yongkong. Chen Liang and the Chen family were also stunned. The surrounding villagers widened their eyes in shock. Discuss the marriage? Madame Fang wanted to deny it, but Chen Yulan grabbed her hand. She still said before Madame Fang could, Yes, Uncle. This was my idea. Chapter 547. Her good daughter Chen Liang frowned and turned to look at Chen Yulan. The latter looked calm and said slowly, I'm already married. Now, my life is blissful and my family is happy. However, my mother is alone. She stays in the courtyard in town and doesn't even have anyone to talk to. My heart aches for her. Uncle, you said before that as long as she meets a suitable person, you won't object to my mother remarrying, right? Chen Liang nodded. He was not an unreasonable person. His second brother had died early, and Madame Fang was still young. If she found someone to live with, she would have someone to rely on in the future. Chen sighed and said, "Uncle, you know that my mother is doing this for me. All these years, she has been gritting her teeth and holding on to this family. She has never mentioned marrying again, for fear of making me suffer. But now that I'm married, it's time for her to let go. I advised her to find another partner and live with him in the future. When she grows old, she will have someone to take care of her. Previously, when I got to know Uncle Jiang, I thought that he was a good person and someone to rely on. His family is in town, so it's convenient for her to see my mother. That's why I advised my mother to consider it. My mother thinks that she's already so old. There's no need to make such a big deal out of it. She wanted to discuss it with Uncle Jiang first. If they don't have any objections, then the two families can gather at a table for a meal and get to know each other. No one expected that they would meet a snake just after talking for a while. It's such a coincidence. Now that the imperial court was encouraging widows to remarry, it was not shameful for Madame Fang to find another man to live with. Chen Yulan's words made people feel that she was quite sensible and filial. Of course, there were also people who remained suspicious. But so what if they suspected? The two of them were indeed together, so there would only be two outcomes. One was that they got married, and the other was that they were captured and sunk in the pond. Chen Liang was the village chief and Madame Fang's eldest son-in-law. He would definitely not take her to the pond. Besides, there was no such rule in their village. They said that it was a punishment like sinking into a pond or burning to death. They were just scaring people. If they really killed someone like this, they would have nightmares at night. On the other hand, Jiang Yongkang and Madame Fang were a little stunned. Of course, Jiang Yongkang didn't want to marry Madame Fang. He didn't have a good impression of her. However, Qingyuan glared at him. She gritted her teeth and said in a low voice, "If you want to die, just deny it. Then, tell them about the Gu family and see if they will kill you." Jiang Yongkang shuddered and fell silent. Madame Fang felt her entire body turn cold as she looked at her daughter in disbelief. She actually wanted to push her mother to Jiang Yongkang? Did she want her mother to be with this man? Was she crazy? However, Chen Yulan said in a low voice, "Mother, let's get over this matter first." Madame Fang opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but she was speechless. Chen Liang secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Regardless of whether the other villagers present believed it or not, this explanation was still reasonable. He looked at Madame Fang and then at Jiang Yongkang before saying, "I really don't mind sister-in-law marrying again. Since things have developed to this point, let's sit down and discuss it." The villagers were still discussing. No matter what, they looked at Madame Fang with disdain. The image of a chaste woman that Madame Fang had maintained in the village for so many years was completely shattered. Seeing that he had heard enough, Tong Ping quietly climbed over the broken wall and ran back to the Gu residence. Chapter 548, Fatal Hidden Danger at the Gu residence. Liu Wei had not left yet. He seemed to be very interested in Gu Dajiang. He followed behind him and chattered non-stop, asking many questions. Gu Yundong only felt that his ears were buzzing with the guy's voice. She stayed for a while before leaving. At first, Gu Dajiang was interested. He felt that this young man was extroverted and quite enthusiastic. He was knowledgeable and could pick up any topic. But not long after, Gu Dajiang's face was filled with disdain. Gu Dajiang didn't want to talk to him. He just wanted to be alone with Lun Yang. This person was simply too blind. He wouldn't feel embarrassed even if he was squeezed in the middle as a shiny third wheel. No wonder he hadn't gotten a wife yet. When Tong Ping returned, he could still hear Lu Wei's exaggerated laughter. He trembled slightly and hurried to report the situation to Gu Yundong. Jiang Yongkang and Madame Fang were caught red-handed. According to misinstructions, Zhao Dafa led those women who didn't get along with Madame Fang to pass by her courtyard. They heard Jiang Yongkang's cry and rushed in. The two people in the house happened to be hugging each other. Gu Yundong nodded as she listened. When she heard this, she was slightly stunned. Jiang Yongkang's cry? Tong Ping coughed lightly, and the expression on his face could not be controlled. Yes, Madame Fang has lived here since she was young. She could tell at a glance that the snake was not poisonous. Jiang Yongkang was so frightened that his face turned pale, and he jumped onto Madame Fang. Gu Yundong was speechless. Jump onto her? She held back her jaw, which was about to fall, and let Tong Ping continue. After hearing that, she couldn't help but sneer. Qingyuan is really her mother's good daughter. In order to clear her name, she directly made her mother and Jiang Yongkang a couple. That was why Tong Ping was dissatisfied. So we only took care of those two? Qingyuan escaped just like that? I think all the bad ideas came from her. She's the culprit. Don't worry. Her mother did such a thing. Even if Qingyuan helps her, how many people can really be convinced? Her reputation in the village has already been ruined. Moreover, she's with Jiang Yongkang now. She's no longer a member of the Chen family. If Chen Liang doesn't treat her as his brother's wife, I'm afraid he won't protect Qingyuan like before. This matter also affected Chen Liang. After all, Madame Fang was still a member of the Chen family. Fortunately, there were no suitable men and women in the Chen family who had to marry. When Yo Dan and the others grew up and got married, this matter would have long been forgotten. Coupled with the fact that Chen Liang was the village chief, he still had some prestige in Yongfu village. No one dared to criticize him. However, Madame Zhou and her daughter-in-law would probably be mocked. Although Gu Yundong had a good relationship with the Chen family, she could not let Madame Fang off so easily just because of a few words. That would only make them push their luck. She was just giving them a taste of their own medicine. Wasn't Madame Fang and Jiang Yongkang a match made in heaven? As for Qingyuan, she was anxious to clear her name, but she forgot that besides the villagers of Yongfu village, her husband was also present. In fact, Wu Chong was the one who felt most embarrassed about what had happened to Madame Fang. As Madame Fang's son-in-law, he saw his mother-in-law who was actually caught secretly meeting someone at such an old age. He felt that he had lost all his face. Therefore, the hidden danger that Qingyuan had planted was the most fatal. Chapter 549. The End of the Fang Mother and Daughter. Keep an eye on them and see what happens next, Gu Yundong instructed Tong Ping. After listening to her analysis, Tong Ping's blood immediately boiled, and he no longer felt indignant. Sure enough, 2 days later, Tong Ping heard the latest news. Madame Fang and Jiang Yongkang were indeed together. The two of them had returned to town. The small courtyard where Madame Fang had originally lived had also been cancelled. She was now living in Jiang Yongkang's house. Because they were husband and wife halfway, Jiang Yongkang's son and daughter-in-law were very awkward and couldn't accept it. However, with another labor at home, it was much easier. The clothes of the Jiang family were washed by Madame Fang, and even Jiang Yongkang's grandson was raised by Madame Fang. Madame Fang was petty and lazy, so she naturally had to refuse. However, Jiang Yongkang had no feelings for her. Not only did he not help her, but he was also wary of her. Madame Fang was furious. She wanted to go back to Yongfu village to seek justice from her late husband's brother, who was the village chief, but she quickly realized that she was not a member of the Chen family. She wanted to go back to her maternal family to get her brothers, but her maternal family despised her for losing face. She was already so old, but she still did such a thing. Other than her mother scolding Jiang Yongkang, no one paid attention to her. However, Jiang Yongkang had always been a scheming person. In order to hook up with Madame Yang these few months, he could be said to have a pure heart and few desires in Yongfu village. Now that he had returned to town, his original lover started going out with him again. He did not go home all day. Although Madame Fang hated him very much, since the two of them were married, he was her man. How could he flirt with women outside all day and let her be an old maid at home? Madame Fang was also ruthless. She directly told on Jiang Yongkang's lover's husband. Jiang Yongkang's affair was exposed again and he was beaten up by that man. His legs were broken, so he could only lie in bed and recuperate. He could not cause trouble anymore. He quarreled with Madame Fang at home every day and they gradually started to fight. The two of them were constantly injured and did not have a good time. As for Qingyuan, She was treated coldly after she followed Wu Chong back to the Wu family. Wu Chong felt that if his mother-in-law could do such a thing, what about Qingyuan, who had relied on his mother-in-law since she was young? Was she also a restless woman? Since that day, he was not very willing to touch her. Anyway, there was nothing to be afraid of in the Chen family now. He began to have no scruples when doing things. The Wu family also had an understanding of the Fang family, especially after Wu Chong's subjective depiction. The Wu family unanimously believed that Madame Fang was unruly and had embarrassed their family. If Qingyuan had done anything wrong, the Wu family would have divorced her. They hadn't divorced yet, but Qingyuan's life had become exceptionally difficult. Not long after, Wu Chong had another woman outside. When that woman got pregnant, she was directly brought into the Wu family and even wanted to be his equal wife. Qingyuan made a scene because of this and even ran back to the Chen family to ask Chen Liang to stand up for her. Although Chen Liang was extremely disappointed in the mother and daughter, Qingyuan was still his brother's daughter after all. He still went to the Wu family to reprimand Wu Chong. Wu Chong did not take Chen Liang seriously at all. He scolded him for being a busybody and even said that he wanted to divorce his wife. Qingyuan was scared when she heard that. She turned around and chased Chen Liang away. Chen Liang had expected better from her and no longer cared about Qingyuan. However, Wu Chong didn't mention that woman as his equal wife again. Although she was a concubine, her status was much higher than Qingyuan's. Of course, this was all in the future. At this moment, Yundong only instructed Tong Ping to keep an eye on Madame Fang and her daughter. She then let go and did not care anymore. After Tong Ping left, she realized that Liu Wei and Dajiang had stopped talking. A low sigh suddenly came from behind. Chapter 550. The loyal Liu Wei. Yundong turned her head and saw that Liu Wei looked exhausted, as if he had done something big. She did not want to ask him why he was sighing, because Yundong knew very well that the answer was definitely not what she wanted to hear. However, even though she didn't ask, Liu Wei spoke first. "It's really not easy for me to do this for my brother." Seeing the puzzled look on Yundong's face, he immediately explained, "From the moment I met Uncle Gu, I knew that he definitely did not like my brother Shao as a son-in-law. For my brother, I have a lot to do. I tried my best to get close to Uncle Gu, trying to figure out Uncle Gus's personality and preferences. I'll tell brother Shao later and let him be mentally prepared. When the time comes, he can cater to your father's liking and achieve twice the results with half the effort. How is it? I've contributed so much for you two's future. Isn't it impressive?" Yundong looked up at the sky. After a long time, she said faintly, "My father reads books. And then, he thinks that you are a product of those who you hang around. You are the same as the friends you make," Yundong said with great difficulty. "Previously, I had always instilled in my father the impression that Shao Qingyuan was a steady, responsible, taciturn, but practical person. Now, it seems that everything has been overturned by you." Liu Wei blinked, then blinked again. That didn't sound right. Yundong, are you saying that I'm unreliable, irresponsible, and nagging?" Liu Wei was furious. "Have you forgotten who helped you manage the workshop when you weren't in Yongfu village?" Yundong immediately denied it. "That's not what I meant." "It is." Liu Wei was furious and raised his voice, but there was an inexplicable hint of guilt in his voice. In the end, he was still a little nervous. Could it be that he had really done something bad out of goodwill? Damn it. If Uncle Gu really felt that Shao Qingyuan was a good-for-nothing, wouldn't he have broken up his brother's marriage? Liu Wei laughed bitterly in his heart, but on the surface, he was bluffing. "Let me tell you, you're humiliating me. I'm very angry. I won't forgive you. Don't look for me in the future." With that, he rushed out of the Gu family's courtyard, climbed into his carriage, and left. Yundong was speechless. He seemed to be the one who came to Yongfu village to look for her all the time, right? Aunt Ku slowly walked out from behind. She could not help but glare at Yundong. "Why are you scaring him?" "Aunt Ku seems to like Liu Wei. It can't be helped. After interacting with a black-hearted glutinous rice ball like you for a long time, his sincerity is commendable." Gu Yundong laughed. Did she treat him as a child like Yunshu and Yunka? She wanted Aunt Ku to wake up. After all, he was the eldest young master of the Liu family. Although he was a little silly, it was impossible to say that he was not shrewd at all. At the very least, he was a drama queen. However, when she looked up, she realized that Aunt K's expression was solemn and reluctant. Gu Yundong's heart skipped a beat and her voice softened. Aunt, what's wrong? Is there something on your mind? Or did something happen? Tell me. As long as I can do it, I will definitely do it. Aunt Ku sighed slightly. She looked at Gu Yundong, who seemed to want to say something but hesitated. It seemed that there were some words that she had been hiding in her heart for a long time. Now that she wanted to say it, she actually did not know where to start. Aunt Thu. Chapter 551. Auntie Ku is leaving Yundong. Aunt Ku interrupted her. I'm very happy to hear you say that. It's not in vain that I've treated you sincerely. Gu Yundong frowned and heard her continue, but I should go. Go? What do you mean? Back then, I stayed in the Gu family because you wanted to go out to look for your father and Imperial Physician Song. I was worried about Yunshu and Yunka, so I stayed in the Gu family to take care of them. Your father has been found, and you can also contact Imperial Physician Song. In the future, you don't have to worry about the two children when you go out. Naturally, I should go home. Gu Yundong was caught off guard. She really did not expect Aunt Ku to say goodbye. Why should you go back? Aunt, you're alone at home. Yunshu and Kiki are here to accompany you. Besides, we've long treated you as family and plan to support you in your old age. I know. Aunt K's expression softened. These days, she had also treated these children as family. Although I can't bear to Yundong, I should go back. Aunt K's expression was serious and her eyes were stubborn. The Gu family did not treat her as an outsider, but she had a family after all. She also had relatives. Putting everything else aside, just the fact that she still had Nie Tsong, her nephew, to support her in her old age meant that the Nie family would definitely bring her back without a word. If she stayed in the Gu family and let the completely unrelated Gu Yundong take care of her in her old age, what would that count for? The Nie family would be criticized. Moreover, it was also very awkward for her to continue living in the Gu family. Gu Yundong was silent. She lowered her head slightly, as if she did not want to talk to Aunt Ku. She seemed to be throwing a tantrum. Aunt Ku wanted to laugh. You're actually so childish. Alright, I know how you feel. It's not like we can't see each other in the future. The Prefectural city isn't far from here. When I miss you guys, I can just come over again. My body is very strong. It won't be a problem for me to travel back and forth. Gu Yundong pursed her lips and did not want to speak. After a long time, she wiped her face. Alright, since you've made up your mind, I'll respect your choice. However, I won't care about Kiki and Yunshu. Aunt, go convince them yourself. She was indeed black-hearted. Aunt Ka had thought that she was a little cute just now, but she immediately revealed her true colors. However, she had already dealt with Gu Yundong. Could it be that she could not deal with Yunshu and Yunka? That night, when Yunshu returned home from school, Aunt Ka had a very deep conversation with the two children. Of course, the two of them couldn't bear to part with her, especially Kiki. She was crying so hard that her face was smudged. The young lady was the person who interacted with Aunt Ku the most. When Gu Yundong left Yongfu village, it was Aunt Ku who took care of her. After interacting for a long time, they developed feelings for each other and were used to it. When she suddenly wanted to leave, the young lady burst into tears. Aunt Ku comforted her for a long time before she nodded obediently with tears in her eyes. She stayed in her arms for the entire night and refused to leave. Aunt Ku was helpless and happy. She hugged the little girl's soft body and said to Gu Yundong, "Tomorrow. I'll leave tomorrow morning." Gu Yundong was expressionless. "Not tomorrow. My father still has to go to Yunshu's school tomorrow. The carriage is unavailable." Gu Dajiang, who had been watching from the beginning to the end, immediately nodded solemnly. "I have to visit Yunshu's master. After tomorrow, Yunshu and the others will be on leave. I can't delay any longer. Otherwise, Old Master will think that our family is insincere. Old Master? Chapter 552. Where's the Old Master? Yundong felt that his father had misunderstood something, but she could not be bothered to clarify it now. She only said to Aunt Ku, "Yes, that's what happened." Aunt Ku held her forehead. The Gu family had 3 carriages. Could it be that they could not spare one? Even if it was an excuse, they should find an acceptable one, right? However, the little girl in her arms hugged her neck tightly. Her soft voice was simply irresistible. "Aunt, can you leave a few days later?" Kiki's heart aches. Okay. Aunt Ku quickly agreed. A few days later is fine. Forget it. It was quite sudden to bring this up, so it was good to give each other some time. The matter was settled, but the matter of Gu Dajiang visiting Yunshu and Yuanzhi's teacher could not be delayed. As the father, it was his responsibility. The next day, Gu Dajiang took a few cans and placed them in the carriage. In the end, he asked Yunshu worriedly, "Are you sure that your teacher really likes this?" Gu Yunshu nodded affirmatively. "I do. I once saw him eat a full jar and still want to eat more." Gu Dajiang couldn't help but frown. Was it not good for an old man to eat such sweet food? However, since both Yundong and Yunshu said so, it must be true. After everything was prepared, Gu Dajiang got into the carriage. Gu Yundong was also going. She had to go to the shop to look for Zhenggang and Yuanzhi. She had to discuss the matter of opening a shop in the prefectural city. Before leaving, she looked at the Shao family again. Shao Qingyuan still had not returned. Gu Yundong could not help but feel worried. It had been a few days. Why was he still not back? In the past, he had also entered the mountains, but he would return in 3 days at most. It was already the 4th day. If Mao and the other 3 had not followed him, Gu Yundong would not have been able to sit still and would have gone into the mountains to look for them. Yundong? Gu Dajiang's voice sounded in her ears. Gu Yundong suddenly came back to her senses and realized that the carriage had arrived at the county city. Gu Dajiang looked at her worriedly. "Do you want to go to school with me first, or go straight to the shop?" "Let's go to school first." Father Tong, who was outside, heard the order and immediately drove to the left. At the entrance of the school, Gu Dajiang got out of the carriage first. He checked his clothes again and again. After confirming that there was nothing wrong, he went forward and knocked on the door. It was the same gatekeeper. He knew Gu Yundong and recognized Gu Dajiang. Hearing that they had specially come to visit Sir, he quickly led them inside. After all, Gu Yundong had always been unimpeded when she came over. Yunshu and Yuanzhi waved at them and walked towards the room with their classmates who had also come. Gu Dajiang and his daughter turned around and headed for Qin Wenzhang's study. Qin Wenzhang's servant was standing at the door. He was very happy to see Gu Yundong. "Miss Gu, you're here?" "Yes, my father just came back and wanted to visit your master." The servant took another look at Gu Dajiang and smiled. "Young Master Gu mentioned that." "Master Gu, Miss Gu, wait a moment. I'll report it now." After saying that, he entered the study. After a while, there was a rustling sound. Soon, Qin Wenjing came out. "Master Gu, I've heard a lot about you. We've finally met." Qin Wenjing stepped forward and laughed, cupping his hands slightly. Gu Dajiang was speechless. Who was this? Chapter 553. Don't chase celebrities. Qin Wenjing looked up and was stunned when he saw that Gu Dajiang did not move. Gu Yundong tugged at his sleeve. Gu Dajiang suddenly came back to his senses and hurriedly cupped his hands in greeting. Then he said, "Please inform your master that Gu Dajiang has come to visit." Qin Wenjing. Gu Yundong was speechless. "Ahem, well, father." Gu Yundong recalled that her father had addressed Yunshu's teacher as Old Master yesterday. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. "This is Yunshu's teacher." Gu Dajiang's eyes widened as he blurted out, "Isn't Yunshu's teacher Old Master?" "Dad, who told you he's an old man?" Gu Dajiang paused. But didn't you say that he was the top scholar a few years ago? I read the court newspaper. Every top scholar for nearly 15 years is above 4.0 years old. But he's only... He paused and suddenly thought of something. He frowned and said, there's a young genius. He did become the top scholar a few years ago. But didn't that young man surnamed Qin die of illness? Qin Wenjing touched his nose, coughed lightly, and said, if I'm not wrong, I should be that young man surnamed Qin Wenjing. Gu Dajiang suddenly looked at him, his eyes burning. However, his body didn't move, as if he was frozen. Father, Qin Wenjing should be quite normal-looking, right? Was he that scary? Qin Wenjing could not help but look at Gu Yundong and explain. Previously, I did resign for some reasons. There were rumors that I had passed away from illness. I didn't expect this rumor to spread to the Yongning Prefecture. You misunderstood. You're really Qin Wenjing? After a long while, Gu Dajiang finally reacted. His throat was extremely dry, and his voice was hoarse. Qin Wenjing nodded. I'm indeed Qin Wenjing. Miss Gu can testify. Gu Dajiang turned his head and stared at his daughter in a daze. Seeing her nod, he couldn't help but ask, why didn't you tell me that Yuanzhi's teacher is called Qin Wenjing? I'm afraid father will say that it's impolite for me to call the teacher by his name. There were many rules for scholars, especially when it came to respecting teachers. Qin Wenjing was Gu Yuanzhi's teacher, so it was better for her not to be too casual. Who knew that her father would misunderstand that the other party was an old man? Gu Yundong secretly laughed. When she looked up again, she saw her father looking at Qin Wenjing excitedly. The light in his eyes was almost blinding. Master Qin, Mr. Qin, I didn't expect to see you again in my lifetime. This is simply great. You've even become my son's master. But the essay of the Master's Palace examination was excerpted by someone. I was lucky to be able to read it and admire your literary talent. At that time, I thought that if I could meet you one day and ask you for guidance on the essay, I would have no regrets in my life. I didn't expect it to be true. Gu Yundong widened her eyes. No, father, the other party is a scheming person without any integrity. He is not worthy of your admiration. Wake up quickly. Father, well, you've seen Yuanzhi's teacher. Shouldn't we go? Gu Dajiang didn't even turn around. No, I still have a lot to talk to you about. If you don't mind, can you treat me to a cup of tea? I don't mind. Qin Wenjing glanced at Gu Yundong and immediately agreed. Gu Yundong felt terrible. Father, where's your composure? You're already so old. Don't chase after celebrities anymore, right? Chapter 554. Wishes are about to come true. Gu Yundong tried a few times, but in the end, she could not take Gu Dajiang away. She could only leave him in the Qin family to exchange knowledge with Qin Wenjing. She sighed as she walked out of the Qin family school and looked up at the sky. The power of an idol was so great that her father's personality had changed. It was so great that she felt that her status in her father's heart was starting to become precarious. Gu Yundong turned to look at the Qin family's door again before striding forward and entering the carriage. The car drove towards Gus. Not long after, it stopped at the entrance of Gus. When Yuanzhi saw the familiar carriage, he came forward without a word. It was indeed Gu Yundong. He quickly reached out to help her. After being glared at by Gu Yundong, he retracted his hand in embarrassment. Gus' business was quite good. The Gu family's workshop sent fresh goods over every day and they were sold very quickly. When Gu Yundong entered, there were still a few people watching in the shop. It was different from buying white sugar in the past. Women were more interested in dried fruit shops. Therefore, from time to time, there would be well-dressed women coming to the shop. Whether it was food or sweets, they contributed to a large portion of the sales. The moment Gu Yundong entered, she went straight to the counter. The women were a little surprised. They did not know her identity and whispered a few words. Yuanzhi quickly helped them buy the things. Then, he ran over and asked, "Boss, why are you here? Did you write this?" Gu Yundong looked down and found a few pieces of paper. She raised her eyebrows slightly when she saw the gradually smoothing handwriting. Yuanzhi stuck his head out to take a look and immediately chuckled. I wrote it. How is it, boss? Did I improve a lot? He felt that it was not bad. He was someone who was determined to be a shopkeeper. Yundong glanced at him and saw Jincai coming out of the backyard with the account book. He must have gone to check the goods. He was stunned when he saw Yundong. Boss is here. Yes, Uncle Zheng. I came here this time because I have something to tell you. Jincai put the account book away. Boss, feel free to let me know if you need anything. It's like this. Yundong sat on a chair in the reception area with him. As he drank the tea that Yuanzhi had poured, he said, I plan to open another Gus in the prefectural city. As you know, although the business of this shop in the county city is good, its demand is limited. There are only so many people in the county city. Jincai nodded. Indeed. He knew that the boss would expand Gus sooner or later. You've done very well in Gus. There aren't many people I can trust, so I want to hand over Gus from the prefectural city to you. Uncle Zheng has stayed in the prefectural city for a few years before. You're familiar with the situation there and is the best candidate. Of course, it will be tiring at the beginning and there will be many miscellaneous matters. Uncle Zheng will have to work harder. However, Jincai was slightly excited. Of course, he wanted to go to the prefectural city. What was there to be afraid of? No matter how hard and tiring it was worth it to be able to achieve results. He was a man and had some career ambitions. Back then, when he was forced to return from the prefectural city, the unwillingness in his heart tormented him for a few days. Now that he finally had a chance to stand up again, how could he not be happy? Hence, Jincai quickly agreed. Boss, I'll go. Yuanzhi, who had been wiping the same spot with a rag, could not help but get excited. If shopkeeper Zheng left, would his wish to be a shopkeeper be fulfilled? Chapter 555. Being a shopkeeper for 3 months suppressing his excitement, Yuanzhi's ears pricked up even more. He was getting closer and closer to Yundong and Jincai. In the end, he simply stood behind Jincai and wiped the back of his chair with a cloth. Yundong was speechless. Could you be more obvious? Jincai did not know whether to laugh or cry. He simply asked on his behalf, Boss, I'm naturally willing to go to the prefectural city. Then how should we arrange the shop here? Yundong tapped her fingers on the table and glanced sideways at Yuanzhi, who had suddenly stopped nervously. She smiled and said, Uncle Zheng, do you have any suggestions? Actually, although this shop has only been open for less than a year, business has always been very good. There are many customers and most of them are regular customers. Therefore, it's better to use a familiar person to be the shopkeeper. Yuanzhi has been here since the shop opened. He's most familiar with this place and has feelings for it. The customers like him very much. Moreover, he has been learning calligraphy and writing with me these days. He has become more and more mature and steady. He's the most suitable person. Yuanzhi looked at Jincai in a daze. The man's words moved him so much that his eyes turned red. He was usually very strict with her and would say that Yuanzhi was too slippery and not steady enough. Yuanzhi did not expect him to have such a high evaluation in front of his boss. Simply too evil. Yundong glanced at him and smiled. Actually, I've also considered Yuanzhi as the shopkeeper. Yuanzhi's body stiffened. After these days of training, he immediately understood the meaning behind Yundong's words. Has considered it? In other words, she was no longer considering it? Yuanzhi immediately felt a little disappointed and lowered his head weakly. Thinking about it, it made sense. After all, he was still young. How could he be promoted to shopkeeper after being a shop assistant for such a short period of time? However, he did not know what the new shopkeeper's personality was like. Was he easy to talk to? Was he like shopkeeper Zheng who taught him how to read and write? Now that he thought about it, he suddenly realized that shopkeeper Zheng was really tolerant and concerned about him. He was usually a little strict with his words, but whenever there was anything delicious or useful, he would give Yuanzhi a portion. The more he thought about it, the more uncomfortable he felt. Yuanzhi felt like crying. Yundong quickly added, however, after thinking about it, there's another choice. No matter what, Yuanzhi needs to think it through himself. Yuanzhi was stunned. He blinked. What did that mean? What was the other choice? Boss, what do you want me to think about? Gu Yundong smiled. Uncle Zheng is right. After he goes to the prefectural city, this shop indeed needs a skilled person to manage it. You are the most suitable. Zhuangzi's heart, which had just sunk, suddenly came back to life. His eyes lit up. Gu Yundong said, "You'll be the shopkeeper for 3 months." What? You won't let me be the shopkeeper after 3 months? Wasn't this too short? 3 months later, they'll give you 2 choices. One is to continue staying here as a shopkeeper. The other is to go to the prefectural city and continue working under Uncle Zheng. You can decide what you want. Zhuangzi was dumbfounded. This choice was too difficult. He was too difficult. Boss, I have to think about this carefully. His mind was a little chaotic now. Being a shopkeeper had always been his dream. In the previous 15 minutes, this was still his ultimate goal. However, going to the prefectural city did not seem like a bad idea. On the other hand, if he went there, he still had to be a shop assistant. After being a shopkeeper for 3 months, he would be demoted to a shop assistant. Chapter 556. New fellow Gu Yundong took a sip of tea. There's no hurry. Take your time to consider. Tell me when you've thought it through. Oh, okay. Zhuangzi was stunned. He grabbed the rag and turned to leave. Gu Yundong suddenly added, "By the way, during the 3 months you'll be the shopkeeper, the new employee is called Jincai. Take good care of him and let him get familiar with the job as soon as possible." The rag in Zhuangzi's hand fell to the ground. He turned his head and looked at Gu Yundong in horror. He asked in disbelief, "Boss, who are you talking about?" Jincai, the eldest son of the village chief. Zhuangzi's footsteps were a little unsteady. The Jincai who always looked up to the sky every time he saw him? The Chen family's eldest son, whom he unconsciously bent down in front of, came over to be his assistant? At that time, he would probably be the waiter who was ordered around, right? No, how could he think that? That was in the past. Now it was the present. He was not afraid of the young masters and young ladies of the wealthy families in this county. Why would he be afraid of Jincai? He was the shopkeeper. Zhuangzi suddenly thought of himself standing by the counter with his hands clasped and asking Jincai to pour tea for him. Oh my God, just thinking about it made him feel good. Gu Yundong did not know that his heart had been in turmoil for hundreds of rounds. When she saw Zhuangzi's expression, she could not help but ask, "Why? Is there a problem?" "No, there's no problem at all. They'll teach him how to be a suitable and polite assistant. Don't worry, I won't let Uncle Zheng down after such a long time of training." He straightened his back and patted his chest. Gu Yundong felt that his tone was a little strange, but she did not ask further. She just nodded and said, "All right, since there's no problem, prepare yourself in the next 2 days. While Uncle Zheng is still here, if you have any questions, ask as soon as possible. Learn to make accounts. Also, consider the previous question." "Yes, I understand, boss. I will definitely do my best." Zheng Gang also reassured her. "I will slowly let go these 2 days and let Zhuangzi learn to be independent. By the way, I don't know when that Jincai will come." "Tomorrow. They'll get him to come over tomorrow." As Gu Yundong spoke, she gave some instructions before leaving Gus. She bought some things on the street. Seeing that it was about time, she returned to Qingyuan's school. Her father seemed to be still talking to Qingyuan. Even before Gu Yundong reached the door of the study, she could hear that hearty and happy laughter. She even heard Qingyuan's laughter. The two of them were clearly talking happily as like-minded scholars. They had probably forgotten the time, right? She sighed slightly and simply turned around to go to the classroom where the students were studying. This was not the first time Gu Yundong had come to see her younger brother in class. In Qingyuan's school, other than him, there was another teacher who taught books and a martial arts teacher. These 2 people were not old. They were the teachers that Qingyuan had personally found. After all, he had a lot of things to do. It was impossible for him to personally teach these students at all times. For example, right now, the teacher was teaching the students in the academy. Yundong deliberately lightened her footsteps when she went over, afraid that she would disturb their studies. Unexpectedly, when she got closer, she didn't hear any sound. The usually loud reading sounds seemed to have disappeared all of a sudden. She was slightly stunned and could not help but speed up as she walked towards the classroom. Yes, there were more than 10 students. Chapter 557. Bian Yuanzi's change. However, they were not studying. Instead, they were playing chess. They were playing chess in pairs, either holding white pieces or black ones. They lowered their heads slightly and frowned seriously. Yundong saw her younger brother at first glance. The little guy was holding a white piece and thinking hard. Opposite him sat Louis. Wasn't Louis an expert in chess? Yunshu, you've just come into contact with this area. Where did you get the courage to fight him? Yundong stood outside the window and watched as the child held the chess piece and did not move for a long time. However, Louis, who was sitting opposite him, had excellent self-control. He did not rush the other party and just waited. On the other hand, Yundong waited for a long time but did not see him place his piece. Finally, she turned to look at the others. Bian Yuanzhi was also playing chess. In front of him was the oldest student in the school, Juncan, who had identified himself as everybody's elder brother. Juncan was very patient. He taught Bian Yuanzhi, who had just entered the school and had a poor foundation, step by step. He even enjoyed this process of teaching. The last time Yunshu celebrated his birthday, he had taught Xingjia and the others very gently. It had almost made brother Xingjia and even Yodan call him teacher. Now that he was facing Bian Yuanzhi, he used all his patience to tell the guy what to do step by step from scratch. His voice was neither fast nor slow, as if the wind was blowing. Bian Yuanzhi, who was originally a little nervous, slowly relaxed. He followed his rhythm and changed from not daring to casually place a piece to being able to analyze the situation by himself. Yundong felt very relieved as she watched Bian Yuanzhi gradually walk out of the shadow of the old Gu family. She had always been worried that after Bian Yuanzhi experienced those things, he would not be able to open his heart and accept others. He would feel that he was an outsider living under someone else's roof and live cautiously, not even daring to speak loudly. Fortunately, with Yunshu around, there were these cute classmates. When Yundong returned from Wanqing Prefecture this time, she could clearly feel that he had become much more cheerful and confident. Studying was indeed very useful. Yundong smiled, retracted her gaze, and looked at the others in the classroom. Other than a few impatient students who scratched their heads and ears and kept moving their butts, everybody looked very serious. Even though they were not very old, they looked like they were experienced when holding chess pieces. The teacher didn't care much either. He was reading a chess manual by himself. Occasionally, he would raise his head to take a look. Most of the time, he let the students play freely. Finally, Yundong looked at his younger brother again. Seeing that he finally placed the white piece in his hand slowly on the chessboard, she actually heaved a sigh of relief. When it was Louis's turn, he moved quickly, picking up the black piece and placing it neatly. Yundong thought that her younger brother would probably have to wait for a long time. Unexpectedly, just as Louis retracted his hand, he heard Yunshu's clear voice. "No, you can't do it here." Louis was in a daze. He watched as Yunshu picked up the chess piece he had just placed and stuffed it back into his hand. He could not help but ask curiously, "Why can't I go down here?" Louis looked at it carefully. It did not violate the rules. Wasn't it normal to play that move? Chapter 558. My big sister said it. He looked at Yunshu with sincerity and curiosity. Yunshu also told him very seriously, "Of course you can't go down here. Look, if you go down here, I can only go down there. Then you go down here and then follow closely. To lose." Xiu, who was playing chess at the side, almost choked on his own saliva when he heard his words. Louis was also speechless. "It's fine if you lose. I'm good at chess." It's normal that you can't compare to me. It's not embarrassing to lose. You've misunderstood. I'm not afraid of losing face. I'm actually doing this for your own good, Gu Yunshu said sincerely and solemnly. This time, Louis didn't quite understand. What do you mean? Think about it. We're learning to play chess, so you definitely hope that the more you play, the better at it you become. If you play with me, won't it be boring to win in such a short time? But no one here is your match, so you're the only one you have to challenge. Then how should I challenge myself? Liu Wei asked humbly. You have to turn the impossible into a possibility, Gu Yunshu suggested kindly. Look, your chess piece should be placed here, so I can stop you. Then do you think that it won't be so easy to win this chess game? You have to challenge this difficulty. Think about it. I made a lousy move, but I still have the ability to turn the tables. Wouldn't that be challenging yourself? Liu Wei's eyes lit up. That makes sense. The people beside him actually felt that this theory was not wrong at all. Gu Yundong's eyes almost popped out. This worked? Even the teacher, who was sitting not far away and reading the chess records, could not help but twitch his lips. He glanced at Gu Yunshu and pitied Liu. As expected, Liu Wei really listened to his suggestion and placed the chess piece in the position that Gu Yunshu had mentioned. Gu Yunshu immediately placed the white chess piece happily. All right, it was Liu Wei's turn to frown and think for a long time. After 2 or 3 steps, Gu Yunshu placed the white chess piece on the chessboard and jumped up from his seat. I won, I won. Thank you everyone for your support and love for me. I couldn't get to where I am today without everyone's help and care, especially Liu. He sacrificed himself to help me. I'm so touched. He was overjoyed. He ran around the classroom, his face flushed with excitement. On the other side, Liu Wei was still holding the black piece with a dumbfounded expression. He won? Gu Yunshu was overjoyed and ran back to Liu Wei's side. He patted his shoulder and comforted him. It's all right. You just didn't succeed in challenging yourself. It's not embarrassing to lose to me. Gu Yundong covered her face. No, this was not her brother. However, the teacher could not help but pick up a chess piece and throw it at him. What are you happy about? It's an unfair victory. Gu Yunshu said confidently and puffed out his chest. Then do you think that what I said just now was wrong? The teacher choked. Really, seemed to be true. My elder sister said that it's my ability to fool people until they're crippled. The little guy looked very proud. Gu Yundong, no, I never said that. Don't spout nonsense. Now do you know how much you've led the children astray? Qin Wenzheng's familiar voice suddenly came from behind. Gu Yundong suddenly turned her head and saw that her father and Qin Wenjing had arrived at some point. It seemed like they had watched the entire scene. Qin Wenjing snorted. Come over. I have something to tell you. Chapter 559. Plans for Gu Dajiang. Gu Yundong looked at Gu Dajiang guiltily. She really didn't. Yunshu had figured it out himself. She didn't teach her. She swore. Gu Dajiang didn't say anything, but his expression was very gentle. He didn't mean to blame her. Gu Yundong glanced at the classroom again before following Qin Wenjing to the side. What do you want to tell me? Gu Yundong asked. However, Qin Wenjing glanced at Gu Dajiang and asked her, Your father has already been found. What are your plans for him from now on? Plans? Gu Yundong found it strange. He's my father. I don't need to plan for him. My father can do whatever he wants. Then have you ever thought of letting him study at the academy again? Gu Yundong was stunned for a moment before her eyes lit up. That's right. His father liked to read so much that he could pick up the textbooks and study again. In the past, their family was poor. Now that the conditions allowed it, there was no problem at all. Gu Yundong thought in frustration that she had been restricted by her inherent thinking. After all, Gu Dajiang already had a son and a daughter. He had worked for so long that it was difficult for him to associate him with school. However, this was ancient times. Not to mention that Gu Dajiang was only in his early 30s, there were many people in their 60s or 70s who were still taking the elementary scholar examination. Why couldn't her father? Qin Wenjing said, I talked to your father for a long time and realized that he hasn't abandoned his books all these years. He's still hungry for knowledge. Moreover, he's indeed very talented in studying. He was delayed in the early years, but now that he's studying again, he can quickly get used to it. He seemed to like Gu Dajiang. Your father is very ambitious. All these years, he has been a small accountant in a restaurant. It's really wasting his talent. In my opinion, his knowledge is better than those elementary scholars. Yuanzhi's talent is probably inherited from him. He's a good seedling. Gu Yundong nodded. You're right. I'll persuade my father to study. After a pause, she suddenly thought of something and frowned. But there doesn't seem to be a suitable academy in Fengkai County. Qin Wenjing was teaching children here, and he was also very busy. Her father was not suitable to be here either. Dongyi Academy was also famous, but Gu Yundong did not like the atmosphere there, so she did not consider it at all. There was also the county school. However, her father had not even participated in the preparation scholar exam and could not meet the admission standards of the county school. The others were just some small private schools. The teachers were all elementary scholars. They only taught people how to read, so they couldn't teach Gu Dajiang. Qin Wenjing glanced at her and said coldly, "Just you wait." With that, he turned around and left. Gu Yundong laughed and leaned against a pillar at the side. She really waited obediently. Not long after, Qin Wenjing walked back. This time, there was a letter in his hand. The mountain elder of Tianhai Academy in the prefectural city of the Xuanhe Prefecture has some ties with me. When the time comes, you and your father will bring this letter to visit him. As long as your father's knowledge passes his test, he can enter Tianhai Academy. Keep it well and don't drop it. Gu Yundong blinked. You want my father to study in the prefectural city? She had indeed said that to get Qin Wenjing to help introduce her father, but at most, she thought that her father would go to the county to study. As long as Qin Wenjing proved that Gu Dajiang's knowledge was not inferior to those elementary scholars, it was not impossible for the county school to make an exception. In any case, when the exam came, he could just take the preparation scholar exam and come back. Unexpectedly, Qin Wenjing gave a recommendation letter for the prefecture capital. Chapter 560. Going to the prefectural city to study. Qin Wenjing glanced at her. But you don't want it? Of course, Edo. She had also heard of the Tianhai Academy in the prefecture capital. It had 100 years of history in the Xuanhe Prefecture and was an old academy that had produced many high scholars, honorable scholars, and top scholars. It was said that the current mountain elder had been an official in the capital many years ago. Later, when he was old, he returned to his hometown and became the mountain elder of Tianhai Academy. Qin Wenjing actually directly gave the mountain elder a recommendation letter. Indeed, it was easy to take advantage of a big tree. Qin Wenjing was really too useful. Seeing that she had no objections, Qin Wenjing nodded in satisfaction. Aren't you going to the prefectural city to open a shop? You don't have to worry about no one taking care of him. However, before you go, get your father to prepare himself. Mountain Elder Qi is very strict. Gu Yundong smiled. I know. Qin Wenjing gave her a pile of books and asked her to bring them back for Gu Dajiang to read. Gu Yundong thanked Qin Wenjing sincerely, but the other party snorted. Bring me a few more cans later. Our Anning likes it. It was obvious that he liked it, but he still insisted on pushing it to his daughter. This guy was indeed shameless. Gu Yundong responded and went to look for Gu Dajiang. The two of them returned to Yongfu village. After she handed the books to Gu Dajiang and told him Qin Wenzheng's suggestion, Gu Dajiang, who was sitting in the carriage, was slightly stunned. He looked at the books and did not say anything for a long time. Dad. Gu Dajiang placed his trembling fingers on the pile of books. In the past, it was a rare and luxurious thing for him to read so many books. Now that these books were in front of him and he could look through them freely, Gu Dajiang hesitated. Of course, he yearned for it, but Gu Dajiang sighed softly and looked up at Gu Yundong with a smile. Yundong, I know how you feel. It's just that I'm already so old and have long passed the age to study. I won't go to the academy. Gu Yundong frowned. How could he be no longer motivated to study? He was clearly so excited when he saw Qin Wenjing previously and chatted with him happily. Gu Dajiang smiled and said, "You used to take care of your mother and Yunshu and Yunka. Now, you even have to make arrangements for your father? You have a lot to take care of at such a young age." Gu Dajiang had been back for 2 to 3 days. He saw the villagers' attitude towards Yundong, visited the shop and workshop, and went to the orchard. Not only did he see the Gu family's huge business, but he also saw Gu Yundong's hard work and responsibilities. However, she was only 15 years old. Her shoulders were so tender, but she worked so hard to support this family. As a father, these were his responsibilities. Whether it was earning money to support his family or educating his children, these were all things he should carry out. In the past, when he was not around, Yundong had no choice but to move forward. Now that he was back, he wanted his daughter to rest and not be so tired. She was not alone anymore. She could rely on him. Perhaps he did not have Yundong's talent in business, but he also wanted to help her share the burden so that she could have more time to rest. Instead of exploiting her and even asking her to spend money to send him to the prefectural city to study, she was already in charge of Yunshi's school fees. Could it be that she had to be in charge of his? It didn't make sense. Alright, they'll return the books to Master Qin another day. It's enough for Yunshu to study in our family. Chapter 561. Finally back. Gu Yundong could tell that he was worried. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Father, what are you thinking about?" She laughed. "Don't think that you're adding to my burden. I don't feel tired doing business and opening a shop. This is something I like to do. Opening another shop is an additional sense of achievement for me. I'm enjoying this process." Gu Dajiang was stunned. Enjoy? This was the first time he had heard such a statement. "Father, I know that you want to take care of me and share my burden, but I think that no matter who it is, they have their own path to take. I like to do business, so I chose this path. To me, this is not hard and exhausting work, but a career that can bring me energy. And studying is the path father should take." But how was he going to reply? "Father, if you want to help me, then go to the academy in the prefecture capital. A person can only unleash his greatest strength in his area of expertise. Think about it. If you get a scholarship and even befriend many like-minded classmates, won't it be more helpful to my future business?" Gu Dajiang seemed to be enlightened and suddenly woke up. Yundong had simply provided him with a new idea. Yes, Yundong lacked connections and people with achievements. He was too narrow-minded. Gu Dajiang instantly felt comfortable. He felt as if all his depression had been swept away. He immediately laughed heartily. "Yes, Yundong is right. I'm not as far-sighted as you." It wasn't that he was inferior to her, but Gu Dajiang had always placed his family first. This caused him to be limited when making a choice. Fortunately, he was convinced. The carriage drove all the way into Yongfu village. When they reached home, Gu Yundong told them about Gu Dajiang going to the prefectural city to study. At the same time, she said to Aunt Ku, "Aunt, wait a few more days. When the time comes, Father and I will go to the prefectural city. We'll have company together." Aunt Ku glared at her helplessly and did not say anything else. After dinner, Gu Yundong turned around and went to Chen Liang's house. He instructed Chen Jincai to go to the shop the next day. When she came back, she went to the Zheng family again. 2 days ago, she had promised Dong Xiulan to find a school suitable for Zheng Jia to study in. Now was the time to tell her. Gu Yundong was talking about a private school in the neighboring village. It was Qin Wenjing who had told her. He had met and interacted with the gentleman from the private school and had a good impression of him. Gu Yundong felt that it was very suitable for Zheng Jia. It was not very far, and he didn't have to participate in the imperial examination. Madame Dong trusted Gu Yundong very much and agreed on the spot. She said that she would bring Zheng Jia to take a look another day. After Gu Yundong left, she hurriedly thought about preparing the apprenticeship gift. Zheng, who felt that the canned food was not bad. "Look, The Gu family also took canned food when they visited Master Qin. This thing is not cheap. We work in the Gu family's workshop and can buy it with a discount. It's definitely not wrong to take this. Madame Dong nodded repeatedly. You're right. It's definitely not a problem to follow Yundong. Therefore, the next day, Madame Dong took Zheng Jia to the private school with the canned food. She was very excited when she returned. She had always kept a low profile in the village and did not speak much. Now whenever she met anyone, she had to tell them that her son was going to school. Even when she reached home, the excitement did not subside. Then she saw Shao Qingyuan, who had just walked into the Shao family's courtyard. Madame Dong was stunned. Qingyuan was back? She quickly let Zheng Jia enter the house first and hurried to the Shao family's courtyard. Chapter 562. Yundong and her father are back. The courtyard of the Shao family, which had been quiet for a few days, was bustling with activity. Not only was Shao Qingyuan back, but Mao and the other three were also standing in the courtyard, checking on their prey. It seemed like they had gained a lot from this trip. Seeing Madame Dong enter, Shao Qingyuan handed her 2 pheasants. Auntie, take them back to eat. However, Madame Dong couldn't be bothered to take the 2 pheasants. She quickly said, Qing, you're finally back. We were so worried for so many days this time. Let me tell you, Yundong is home. Shao Qingyuan's eyes lit up. He stuffed the pheasants into Mao's hand and turned to leave. Unexpectedly, before he could take a step, Madame Dong grabbed him. Hey, don't be hasty. I haven't finished speaking. Shao Qingyuan frowned. Madame Dong lowered her voice slightly. Not only is Yundong back, but her father is also back. Shao Qingyuan paused and asked uncertainly, her father? You're saying that Uncle Gu has been found? Isn't that so? We've all seen him. I heard from Yundong that she met him at Wanqing Prefecture. His father hasn't given up on looking for them for so long. Now, the family has finally reunited. Madame Dong sighed. You're the future son-in-law of the Gu family now. This is the first time you'll see your future father-in-law. How can you look like this? You have to leave a good impression on him, right? Shao Qingyuan had just returned from the deep mountains and was still sweating. Not only were his clothes wet, but they were also tattered. His hair was like a hen's nest. He had definitely not taken a shower in the past few days. Gu Dajiang was a scholar. He would definitely be dissatisfied if Shao Qingyuan appeared in front of him like this. Madame Dong knew that Shao Qingyuan didn't look pretty every time he returned from the mountains, so she quickly came over to remind him. Shao Qingyuan looked down and nodded. He'll go clean up. He turned around to get a set of clothes and went straight to the bathroom. Madame Dong heaved a sigh of relief and looked at the prey in the courtyard. Although they had been in the mountain for a long time and there was a lot of small prey, she did not see any big guys. However, there seemed to be 2 large boxes of herbs in the corner. Did Qingyuan pick them? Madame Dong was still looking when Mao and the others surrounded her. Auntie Dong, has Miss Father really been found? Have you seen him? What kind of person is he? Needless to say, just by looking at the girl, you should know that her father is definitely not bad-looking. Who asked about his appearance? I'm asking about his temperament. Do you know his temperament? Chapter 563. Rejected. Madame Dong was originally a little nervous, but after hearing their words, she felt that it made sense and immediately became confident. Qingyuan was a good person. Why would a woman marry? Wasn't it just because she wanted her man to treat her well? Qingyuan had nothing to say to Yundong. He heard that when Yundong wanted to open a workshop, Qingyuan gave out all his savings without a word and did not leave a single cent for himself. Yundong's blueprint was taken away by the young master of the Peng family. Qingyuan chased after him without thinking. Yundong's mother was sick and still lacked an herb. These days, Qingyuan went into the mountains to look for it every few days. When Yundong wasn't around, it wasn't that no one came to cause trouble for the workshop. They just wanted to make a scene while Yundong wasn't around. It was all settled by Qingyuan. Madame Dong felt that no man in the entire Fengkai County would treat a woman so well, let alone Yongfu village. Even when her mother-in-law was still around when they first got married, the mother-in-law controlled the family's money and secretly hid it from her. She was furious. Therefore, Gu Dajiang would definitely be satisfied with Shao Qingyuan. At this moment, Zheng who was not around. Otherwise, he would definitely stand in the shoes of an old father and tell her, **t. While they were talking, Shao Qingyuan had finally tidied up. When he came out, he was refreshed and looked especially young and energetic. Madame Dong nodded. Yes, not bad. He even put on new clothes. Shao Qingyuan went back to his room to get the wine. Liu Wei had left it here. He said that it was ridiculous that he didn't even have wine in his house as a man. Then he brought 2 jars of wine over the next day. Shao Qingyuan had never drunk it before. He didn't like it, but it was just right to send it to his future father-in-law. In addition to the wine, he also carried the wild chickens and rabbits. It was a pity that there were no good books, calligraphy, or paintings at home. If he wanted to suit his father-in-law, that would be the most suitable. Madame Dong, on the other hand, felt that there was no problem. There was wine and meat. It was already very good in the countryside. However, before Shao Qingyuan left the courtyard, he suddenly stopped. As if he had thought of something, he quickly returned to his room. When he came out again, he was holding a wooden box in his arms. Others didn't know what was inside, but it looked quite expensive. Only then did Shao Qingyuan slowly exhale and walk towards the Gu residence. At the Gu family's entrance, Gu Dajiang stood there with a cold expression. When Shao Qingyuan returned, many people in the village saw them carrying a lot of prey. Gu Dajiang had originally planned to stroll around the fruit forest, but when he heard the news on the way, he returned without a word. Who knew that even after waiting for half a day, Shao Qingyuan didn't come to visit? Alright, this guy wanted to marry his daughter with this attitude? No way. From afar, Shao Qingyuan saw Gu Dajiang looking at him coldly. Uncle Gu. Shao Qingyuan recognized him at a glance. He secretly heaved a sigh of relief and suppressed the nervousness that suddenly surged up. He walked up to him and said, Im Shao Qingyin, Yundongs. Before he could finish speaking, Gu Dajiang interrupted him. Oh, Shao Qingyuan, right? I understand. You can leave now. Shao Qingyuan frowned. Uncle Gu. Gu Dajiang turned around and walked straight into the Gu residence. Chapter 564. Meeting Fiance again. When Shao Qingyuan wanted to follow him in, the door was suddenly closed and there was no more movement. He pursed his lips and sighed inwardly. True enough. He did not say anything and did not knock on the door. He just stood outside the door and faced the Gu family's house. Madame Dong, Mao, and the others were all shocked. They stood at the corner and looked at each other, talking softly. What's going on? Didn't they say that Uncle Gu is easy to talk to? Why did you close the door directly? He doesn't even have time to understand our young master's character. That's right. I think you might not know that our young master has been rejected. Don't all actors sing like this? As fathers, they look down on poor boys, so they deliberately don't let the two of them meet and take the opportunity to break them up. But our young master isn't poor, right? Compared to young Master Liu in the county, he's poor. Could it be that Uncle Gu wants to matchmake miss with the young master of the Liu family? Everyone turned their heads and looked at Shu, who was the last to speak. In the end, Mao said, let's go and bring young master back first. Then we can sit down and discuss how to enter the Gu family. As he spoke, he was about to walk towards Shao Qingyuan. Unfortunately, Madame Dong pulled him back. What are you going to do? She glared at them. Can't you tell? That's a test for our future father-in-law, understand? There are also families in our village who dote on their daughters. They will deliberately make things difficult for their son-in-law when he comes for the first time. Is that so? Madame Dong nodded affirmatively. That's right. When the 6th grandfather in our village married his daughter, he asked the groom to help him with half a day's work. Yundong's father is a refined man, so he won't torture Qingyuan like this. I reckon he'll just stand outside for a while to test his patience. How long will that take? Madame Dong was not sure about this. It shouldn't be long. As she spoke, she raised her head and looked at the scorching sun above her, feeling a little worried. The sun was so bright and the weather was so hot. She hoped that he would not get a heatstroke later. No, she had to go back and prepare some honeysuckle. Seeing that she had left, Mao and the other three looked at each other with even more worry in their eyes. At the same time, in the Gu family's courtyard, Gu Yundong also looked helplessly at her father's back as he returned to his room. She wanted to say something, but Aunt Ku pulled her back. Don't add fuel to the fire. Let me tell you, if you speak up for Shao Qingyuan, he will have to stand outside for another 2 hours. Do you believe me? Then, he thought for a moment and asked the previous question, then why did father make things difficult for my brother Shao? Are you going to break them up? But my brother Shao is such a good person. Gu Yunke ran in and nodded. Yes, elder brother Shao is great. Gu Dajiang felt terrible. It was fine if it was the eldest daughter, but why was his son and youngest daughter subdued by him? However, Madame Yang seemed to understand and nodded. He's great. Gu Dajiang felt that his family had lost. He needed to hold on to the last line. Gu Yundong did not dare to speak anymore. Indeed, the more she praised Shao Qingyuan, the angrier her father became. Chapter 566. Note, however, seeing that the weather was getting hotter, Gu Yundong began to feel uneasy. Aunt Ku pulled her over. It's fine. I just went to take a look. He just sweated a little too much, but he's still very energetic. Gu Yundong nodded randomly. No one knew if she was listening. However, at this moment, Madame Cui came over to let them have lunch. This meant that Shao Qingyuan had been standing outside for 2 hours. It would only get hotter when it was noon. She followed Gu Dajiang to the dining hall, but she couldn't eat much. She only ate some porridge. Gu Dajiang looked up at her and sighed inwardly. This silly girl. She was clearly so steady when doing business. Why was she unable to hold it in now? He shook his head and pretended not to see it. He turned around and picked up a pork rib for Madame Yang to eat. Gu Yundong was speechless. You're torturing my man while showing off your love in front of me. Can we still be father and daughter? I'm angry. I'm not eating anymore. Gu Yundong put down her chopsticks and ran towards the door. Other than the main door in the middle, there was a small door at the side of the Gu family's courtyard. Gu Yundong opened the small door and secretly glanced at Shao Qingyuan. Perhaps sensing her gaze, Shao Qingyuan quickly looked over. When their eyes met, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Then, he moved his lips silently, as if he was saying something. Gu Yundong could vaguely tell that he said that he was fine and asked her to go back quickly. It was just standing for a few hours. It was not a problem for him. Gu Yundong immediately felt very uncomfortable, especially when she saw his lips that were cracked by the sun. Her heart ached constantly. At this moment, there were many people passing by the door. They were mostly working in the Gu family's workshop. The weather was hot now, and the days were long and the nights were short. The working time in the workshop had also been adjusted. At noon, everyone could go back and rest for 2 hours. Therefore, other than those on duty, many people went home to eat after getting food in the workshop. They also rested before coming back to work in the afternoon. Therefore, when these people passed by the Gu family's door, they saw Shao Qingyuan standing there stiffly. Seeing his pursed lips and expressionless face, no one dared to step forward and speak. They only began to discuss softly. Shao Qingyuan pretended not to hear them and stood there like a soldier. In the end, Gu Yundong did not persuade him to leave. Although her heart ached, she knew Gu Dajiang's intentions. If she slapped her father in the face at this time, if Shao Qingyuan dared to bully her in the future, her father would not even have the right to speak up for her. Shao Qingyuan did not know what it was, but he had always listened to Gu Yundong. He swallowed it without even opening his eyes. It felt a little strange. There was no particularly strong medicinal smell, and it was slightly bitter. After Gu Yundong fed the medicine, she went out with the others. Only then did Tong Ping and Father Tong come over to help Shao Qingyuan take off his wet clothes and wipe his body with hot water. The two of them finally saw how serious the injury on Shao Qingyuan's back was. Not only was he scratched by the wolf claws, but he also seemed to have been cut by sharp objects. The wound was very deep. Originally, it was not a big problem to bandage the injuries with medicine. Unexpectedly, when he came back, it was hot and then raining. His wound, which had originally healed a little, had torn open again. If not for Shao Qingyuan's good physique, he would not have been able to hold on. But Gu Yundong was still very angry. She did not know whom she was angry with. In the end, she could only kick the pillar under the corridor. Gu Dajiang's face was dark. He looked at Gu Yundong guiltily. Chapter 568. Blocking Gu Dajiang, but Gu Yundong had been paying attention to the door and did not receive his gaze. The doctor was quickly brought back. He was from the village, so it was not difficult for him to treat external injuries. Actually, as long as Shao Qingyuan woke up, he could handle it himself. The doctor prescribed medicine for Shao Qingyuan and wrapped the wound before walking out. Gu Yundong hurried forward and asked, "How is he?" "As long as the fever subsides, it'll be fine. It's best not to touch the wound on your back. Avoid touching water. You'll be fine after recuperating for a while." Gu Yundong got someone to send him out and walked into the house in a few steps. Shao Qingyuan was half asleep. When he saw her come in, he even smiled at her. Gu Yundong glared at him angrily. "You deserve it. Who told you not to say anything?" Shao Qingyuan didn't seem to hear her and just looked at her. They had not seen each other for a long time. Initially, he wanted to stand in front of her in clean clothes. He did not expect to be in such a sorry state, which made him feel very regretful. Gu Yundong's heart softened. She walked to the edge of the bed and lowered his voice. "They'll stay here and watch over you. Hurry up and sleep. Amao told me just now that you didn't sleep well in the mountains. Thankfully you lasted until now." "Yes." Shao Qingyuan's throat was dry, and his voice was hoarse. My father was also very nervous when he heard that you were injured. He didn't mean to blame you." Only then did Shao Qingyuan feel relieved. He closed his eyes slightly and fell asleep. Gu Dajiang, who was outside the door, wanted Gu Yundong to come out a few times, but he could not speak. He didn't feel that he had done anything wrong. With his observation of Shao Qingyuan and the information he had heard from Yundong, it wouldn't be a problem for him to stand at the door for a day and a night. This person was strong. It was not a problem for him to stand at the door and bask in the sun. However, the outcome was indeed terrible. Gu Dajiang began to feel frustrated. He couldn't stay at home anymore. He turned around and said to Madame Yang, "I'm going out for a walk." Madame Yang nodded and began to look at Shao Qingyuan's room worriedly. Gu Dajiang was speechless. It was simply too vexing. With his hands behind his back, he left the Gu residence alone. When Gu Yunshu turned around, she happened to see his back. She suddenly felt as if his father was very lonely. At this moment, the rain had already stopped. After the summer afternoon was washed by the rain, it was much cooler. Gu Dajiang walked along the village road and saw many people going out after the rain. They gathered together and chatted. As he got closer, he heard the words Gu family and wolf cub. His face instantly darkened. Now, the entire village seemed to know that Shao Qingyuan had fainted after being rejected by him. Why were these people so concerned about other people's family matters? However, Gu Dajiang didn't say anything. Instead, a few villagers who were gossiping immediately stopped when they saw him and quickly dispersed. Everyone did not forget that the women who gossiped about Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan were not having a good time. Especially because of their big mouths, the men in the family could not enter the Gu family's workshop to work. Gu Dajiang pursed his lips and continued walking. He thought that he might as well take a look at the orchard. Unexpectedly, after walking for a while, someone suddenly walked out and stopped him. That person asked him, "Are you Gu Dajiang?" Gu Dajiang narrowed his eyes. This person was very unfamiliar. They shouldn't have met before, right? Someone from the village. Chapter 569. Someone with malicious intentions. Gu Dajiang subconsciously frowned. I am. The man looked around in a mysterious manner. Can we talk in private? It was as if something important had happened. Gu Dajiang sized up the person, who looked to be about the same age as him. He was wearing the clothes of an ordinary villager and was shorter than him. His eyes were slightly evasive. Gu Dajiang sneered in his heart and said directly, no. The other party was stunned for a moment, as if he did not expect him to reject so bluntly. However, when he looked up and saw the anger and dissatisfaction on his face, he seemed to understand and said, Brother Gu seems to be very angry. Who's your brother? The man said again, is it because of Shao Qingyuan? I heard that Brother Gu doesn't like Shao Qingyuan. That makes sense. After all, he's a wolf cub that everyone in the village fears. He's fierce and cruel. No one should like him. A wolf cub? Gu Dajiang narrowed his eyes and muttered softly. Seeing that he was interested, the other party immediately said, Brother Gu, you still don't know? This Shao Qingyuan was picked up by the Li family's old master from a wild wolf in the mountains when he was young. In the past, he even drank the milk of a female wolf, so he has the ferocity of a wolf in his bones. When he was young, it was quite obvious that other children didn't play with him because he was a biter. Once, he bit a child's arm until it bled. That child's parents came to seek justice. It was only when the Li family's old master apologized to the parents that it was over. Tell me, didn't old Master Li treat him well? Old Master Li brought him out of the deep mountains and raised him. He caused trouble and old Master Li helped to clean up the mess. He was infamous. Later on, for him, old Master Li cut ties with the Li family and moved out with him. Old Master Li took good care of him. He couldn't even compare to old Master Li's biological son and grandson. Unexpectedly, when old Master Li was seriously ill, not only did Shao Qingyuan ignore him, but after he died, he even sent old Master Li's corpse back to the Li family. He left without looking back. When he returned, he ate meat and drank wine. Don't you think that's unfilial? Everyone in the village says that he's an ingrate and can't be trusted, so he got the title of a wolf cub. That's not all. He was unfilial to the old man and also attacked the children. As for the Gao family at the entrance of the village, he once threw their children into the river. When they almost died, he fished them out and threw them back down. He scared the children out of their wits. Do you think this method is cruel? Because he's so unscrupulous, everyone in the village is afraid of him. No one dares to speak ill of him, and no one introduces him to girls to avoid harming others. But who would have thought that he would actually target your Gu family's young lady and coax her? It's only been a short while, but he's already engaged. As the man spoke, he shook his head regretfully and sighed. Who would believe that he's not coming for the Gu family's assets? Moreover, I heard that his personality will be passed down to the next generation in the future. I pity your daughter. Why did she take a fancy to him? He shook his head and sympathized with Gu Dajiang. Gu Dajiang's eyes darkened. Just as the other party felt that he was about to go back and fight with Shao Qingyuan, he suddenly heard Gu Dajiang's questioning voice. You mean that my daughter's taste is bad? Gu Dajiang sneered and turned to leave. However, this person's words dispelled a lot of the anger in Gu Dajiang's heart. He did not go to the orchard again and returned to the Gu family. As soon as he entered the Gu residence, he smelled the strong smell of Chinese herbs, which made Gu Dajiang sneeze violently. He sniffled and was about to go to Shao Qingyuan's guest room to take a look when he saw a young man rushing over. Gu Dajiang remembered that Yundong had called him Mao previously. He seemed to be Shao Qingyuan's man. Mao stood in front of him with a wooden box in its left hand and 2 pheasants in its right. Chapter 571. He knows the reason. Gu Dajiang looked at him in confusion and heard Mao say, Uncle Gu, this is from our young master. For me? Yes, young master prepared them before coming to the Gu residence. Mao said, these 2 pheasants were just caught before we went down the mountain. They can be cooked tonight. As for what's in this wooden box, I don't know. Previously, when Shao Qingyuan was rejected, he had these things in his hands. However, when Mao came to persuade him, Shao Qingyuan handed them to Mao to prevent them from getting wet, especially the wooden box. It looked like something very important. Mao had been holding it in his hand. He only handed it to Gu Dajiang personally when he saw him. Gu Dajiang took the box and got Mao to carry the pheasants to the kitchen. It was such a hot day. The pheasants would go bad very soon. Then he carried the box into the central room. After sitting down, he placed the box on the table, but he did not open it for a long time. It was only when Shui Rong came in and said that Shao Qingyuan's temperature was no longer that high that he nodded slightly. After a while, he still reached out to the box, pulled open the lock in front, and opened the lid. With just one look, Gu Dajiang's hand froze. There were not many things in the box, but the weight was not light. There were a few banknotes at the top. To the old Gu Dajiang, this was really a huge sum. Below the banknotes was some deeds to a house and a shop. The house was the green brick tile house in Yongfu village. The shop was a medicine shop in Fengkai County. And at the bottom, there was actually another one. So Gu Dajiang looked at the date in surprise. It was indeed the manor which had been bought recently. It should have been bought by Shao Qingyuan 2 days before he entered the mountains. The manor was not big, but it was located near the prefectural city. No wonder there were not many banknotes left in this box. It turned out that they were all used here. These were all Shao Qingyuan's belongings? He gave them all to Yundong? Gu Dajiang's emotions were especially complicated. Seeing that he was silent, Shui Rong, who was standing behind him, paused and asked in a low voice, "Master, are you dissatisfied with young Master Shao?" Sigh. Gu Dajiang shook his head. "It's because I'm satisfied that I'm worried." Shui Rong was puzzled. Gu Dajiang said, "How old do you think our Yundong is? Why is he obsessed with her?" "The problem is that I can't find an excuse to break them up and let Yundong stay single for a few more years." Shui Rong was speechless. He was not a father yet. He could not understand that. He was still at the stage where he wanted to steal other people's cabbages. Hence, Shui Rong did not know what to say.